Chapter 331. 100 years of preaching, 10 years of killing in the following 100 years. Luo Fan roughly passed on to Luo Fu the parts of the scripture of the Tao fruit of the Tao that Luo Fu could and must understand from the scripture of the Tao fruit of the Tao. He didn't need to hold anything back for his son. As a result, he didn't hold back at all when he passed down the scripture to Luo Fu. After cultivating for 1,000,000 years, Luo Fu had already reached the peak of the adversity stage. His accumulated foundation and vast strength had even reached a level that far exceeded a cultivator that had attained the Tao. Under these circumstances, although the number of scrolls he could cultivate was relatively small compared to the entire Tao fruit scripture, only a few hundred scrolls, it was much more than what ordinary cultivators could cultivate. 100 years might seem like a long time, but the scriptures were profound and unfathomable. In this period of time, Luo Fu had only roughly learned the hundreds of scriptures. If he wanted to understand them, he would need a long time to comprehend them. If he wanted to truly master them, he would need an even longer time. 100 years later, Luo Fan finished imparting the last scroll and let Luo Fu comprehend it before smiling at him. Fuer, now that you know the cultivation methods of the various divine abilities, what you need to do next is to cultivate according to the methods and add in your own comprehension. In the end, you will be able to turn the divine abilities into your own strength. There is no need to waste any more time. You can go and cultivate now. Your son obeys. Luo Fu was stunned for a moment before he reacted and bowed to Luo Fan. The 100 years of learning could be said to be the greatest improvement in Luo Fu's life. In the past, Luo Fan had also preached to Luo Fu, and the depth of his preaching was no less than the 100 years. However, back then, Luo Fu's cultivation was too weak, and his comprehension of the mysteries of the world was extremely shallow. Naturally, it was difficult for him to understand the mysteries of the great Tao revealed in Luo Fan's preaching, so his improvement was naturally limited. However, the situation was different now. After 1,000,000 years of secluded cultivation, Luo Fu's realm was more than 1,000 times stronger than when he was listening to the Tao. He could already understand a little of the Tao that Luo Fan was talking about. As soon as he understood this, he could feel the majestic grandeur that Luo Fan's every move and every word, as well as the incomparably thorough understanding of the profound mysteries of the Great Way. One could imagine how great the harvest was. Of course, there was no need for too many empty words to express gratitude between father and son. Therefore, Luo Fu only bowed to show his respect, then retreated to the cultivation room that he had chosen 100 years ago. Luo Fan looked at Luo Fu's departing figure with a faint smile on his face. I should be able to cultivate that magic art in 3 periods. When that time comes, I should have a much better chance of transcending the tribulation. Such thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. The various magic arts that he had imparted to Luo Fu were all-encompassing. If he could cultivate all of them, Luo Fu's strength would increase by at least 1,000 times. In addition, he already had strength comparable to ordinary cultivators. If he still could not transcend the heavenly tribulation, it could only be said that the great Tao of the world was unwilling to let Luo Fu prove his Tao. It was not something that could be changed by humans. With this thought, a strange expression appeared on Luo Fan's face. When Luo Fu went to his cultivation room, he happened to run into Lei Jiuxiao. At this time, the 2 brothers were talking. What a coincidence! But that's good too. It saves us the trouble of meeting again. The thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and he turned his attention away from Luo Fu and the others. He raised his hand and grabbed at the air. From his sleeve, a 10,000 feet long divine dragon rushed out. It twisted and swayed in the void, letting out a roar. After a while, it descended, shrinking into a 10 feet long dragon and appearing in front of Luo Fan. This was the mount that Luo Fan had refined in order to rush to save the god of Buzhou Mountain, Nebula. Seeing Nebula, Luo Fan could not be bothered to wait any longer. He directly raised his hand and grabbed at the air. Billions of 3-dimensional talismans suddenly surged out of his 5 fingers, forming 5 ropes that were completely made of 3-dimensional talismans. They instantly wrapped around Nebula's body. These ropes, which are made of billions of 3-dimensional talismans, locked Nebula in an instant and directly seeped into its body, completely fusing with the core of Nebula. As the infinite 3-dimensional talismans sank into the Nebula, a mysterious change gradually took place. The entire divine dragon's body flashed with a faint glow, and its eyes flashed with some kind of indescribable pain and joy. Its body rapidly shook and expanded. After a while, the glow faded. The 10-feet-long divine dragon had already transformed into a 10,000-feet-long golden dragon. Its entire body shone with golden light, and its claws, teeth, and scales were clearly visible. It was like a living creature, and it was constantly emitting some kind of mysterious and inexplicable fluctuation. This golden dragon's body seemed to be extremely empty, but also seemed to be infinitely full. Its body seemed to contain endless power, but it also seemed to be just an empty shell. As its body twisted and turned, there were flowers emitting the sound of the great Tao, and auspicious clouds that evolved into endless great Tao wrapped around its body. At the same time, its body shuttled through the auspicious clouds. Its head and tail almost never appeared at the same time. The entire image was mysterious and wonderful beyond words. "Thank you for your promotion, Master." A voice that could not be distinguished whether it was male or female came out of the golden dragon's mouth. "Now that I have fused you with the space of the primordial world, although you will be shackled by the space, your speed will reach an unbelievable level from now on. I'm afraid you will be faster than me, riding a cloud." Luo Fan smiled. "Thank you, Master." The golden dragon seemed to be very happy, and its body trembled as it said. Luo Fan knew that although he had refined it again, the golden dragon's spiritual consciousness was still incomplete. It was impossible for it to have any more reactions. He did not say anything else and only said, "Enter my heaven and earth in my sleeve. I will call you if I need anything in the future." "Yes." The golden dragon nodded vigorously. Luo Fan did not hesitate. He waved his left hand, and the golden dragon instantly shrunk. It quickly rushed into his sleeve and entered it in the blink of an eye. At this time, Luo Fan's heaven and earth in his sleeve had already reached a vast and boundless realm after he had improved it several times. There was no problem for it to contain the golden dragon. After keeping the golden dragon, Luo Fan did not stand up. Instead, he raised his hand and shook it again. A gray silk cloth came out of his heaven and earth in his sleeve. Along with the silk cloth were 365 strange monster sculptures that contained a mysterious and desolate aura. These were the seal that had absorbed all the desolate aura from the slaughter origin, as well as the word 365 monsters that possess the massacre intent. The massacre intent is compatible with the supreme great Tao of the chaos world. If I can comprehend it, the degree of compatibility with the chaos world will increase greatly. If I can integrate its mysteries into my martial Tao, it will bring countless benefits to my martial Tao. Such a thought flashed in his mind. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. The silk cloth swayed rapidly. As it swayed, a 3-foot-long long sword wrapped in 365 circles of light slowly floated out of the gray silk cloth and gradually fell into Luo Fan's hand. Holding this long sword, Luo Fan suddenly had a feeling that he held all life and the power to kill all matter. It was as if he could even destroy the heaven and earth if he wanted to. Of course, this feeling only appeared for a very short time. In the blink of an eye, it was suppressed by Luo Fan. Part of this feeling was real, but most of it was just an illusion. It was an illusion that the massacre intent contained within the sword brought to a cultivator. If one really believed in it without a doubt, then one would be lost in the massacre intent and gradually lose oneself. With a slight shake of his hand, the 3-foot-long long sword suddenly shook. The 365 circles of light suddenly expanded and turned into 365 incomparably huge ring-shaped heavenly rivers. This heavenly river was probably 10,000 miles wide, but in this palace hall, it did not seem to be crowded at all. Even if this palace hall looked very narrow, it was still the same. With a thought, Luo Fan's body submerged into the outermost circle of the 365 circles of light. These 365 circles of light were condensed and evolved from the massacre intent. They were very useful. If a cultivator could obtain any one of them, their destructive power would increase by hundreds or even thousands of times. Luo Fan's sun and moon true eyes might be able to see through this massacre intent and even condense and replicate it. But it was just a look. In order to truly understand the mysteries within, in order to comprehend the supreme heaven Tao through the massacre intent, it wasn't something that could be done just by looking at it from the outside. Luo Fan had to personally enter it and feel the massacre intent within. When his body submerged into this circle of light, an endless killing intent suddenly emerged out of nowhere. He suddenly felt as though he had arrived at a brand new world. A brand new world. Countless strange monsters suddenly appeared around him out of thin air, and an infinite amount of substances that could produce massacres appeared around him, attacking him at high speed. Luo Fan's eyes flickered slightly, and his consciousness incorporated all these attacks into his mind. After a slight analysis, his consciousness knew what the massacre intent represented by this circle of light was, and which of the 365 slaughtering creatures it corresponded to. At the same time, he had completely grasped this massacre intent. With this slight realization, a circle of light appeared behind his head. This circle of light was extremely mystical and was actually similar to the giant circle of light that he was in. In fact, it was even purer and possessed even greater power. The circle of light behind his head suddenly swayed gently. The entire circle of light that he was in instantly calmed down. Those endless beasts that were originally pouncing towards him, those lethal substances, instantly vanished as though they were never there. Luo Fan's consciousness flashed with a divine light as he raised his hand and grabbed at the void. A monster statue appeared out of nowhere and completely merged into the circle of light behind his head. As this monster statue merged into the circle of light behind his head suddenly flashed and expanded by 100 times. It was like a giant background displayed behind Luo Fan. It was obvious that with the fusion of this monster statue, the power of this massacre intent that he condensed was at least 100 times stronger. Luo Fan wasn't surprised. With a slight thought, his body arrived at the next circle of light. The same thing happened again, but this time it was related to another beast. This process repeated for a total of 365 times. After 365 times, an incomparably huge disk formed by 365 layers of light appeared behind Luo Fan's head. Every one of the 365 halos of light contained the silhouette of a mysterious monster. Every single one of the halos was not to be underestimated. Although they could not destroy the world, they could easily destroy a gold immortal stage cultivator. After walking through all 365 circles of light, Luo Fan's figure reappeared on his seat. The longsword in front of him was still the same as before, and the circle of light was still shining brightly. There was no change compared to before. As expected of the source of massacre, although I could kill a golden immortal realm cultivator at will, it wasn't as easy as this. A trace of emotion flashed in Luo Fan's consciousness. With a slight thought, the 365 circles of light rippled slightly. As it rippled, the entire palace seemed to shake slightly. The sea of lightning around the palace instantly surged with huge waves of lightning water. After that, a boundlessly powerful suction force appeared out of thin air, and it acted on the source of slaughter and the gray piece of silk. Along with this suction force, an endless murderous aura rushed into the 365 halos behind his head like the Milky Way flowing backwards. At this moment, the shadow of the beast that existed in the 365 circles of light suddenly let out a soundless roar. It seemed to reveal a sense of joy and satisfaction. The suction force was huge, and the speed of the killing intent was also extremely fast. After a day, the desolate killing chi in the silk had already been sucked dry. Even the source of slaughter, which was completely condensed from killing intent, was only left with a faint shadow. There was not even a trace of killing intent left in it. That's enough. Luo Fan's thoughts moved. He stopped sucking. At this moment, the silk had become purely colorless and transparent. The 3-feet-long sword that was wrapped by the circle of light didn't disappear because of this. The shadow still existed, and so did the surrounding circle of light. Due to the loss of the interference of the killing intent, the color of the circle of light became even purer, and the aura of the massacre intent became even more obvious. The killing intent in the source of massacre was so dense that it was unimaginable. It had even reached a level that couldn't be described with numbers. With such a huge amount of killing intent pouring into the 365 circles of light behind Luo Fan's head, the effect it produced was rather shocking. At this moment, the 365 circles of light were shaking slightly, trembling, and stretching slightly. Following this change, the entire palace seemed to be shaking slightly, trembling slightly, and constantly stretching. There was even a feeling of being unable to withstand it, as though it could be stretched out and broken at any moment. A faint killing intent that seemed to exist and yet not exist at the same time began to spread out in all directions from the circle of light. It seemed like heaven and earth, nature, and everything in the universe couldn't be killed. Luo Fan's eyes turned slightly, and gold and silver light flickered slightly. Countless words, diagrams, and runes flashed in his eyes. This process lasted for a full 10 years. On one day after 10 years, the various visions that flashed in Luo Fan's eyes instantly disappeared. As it disappeared, the 365 circles of light behind Luo Fan's head quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it became the size of a speck of dust. With a slight rush, it burrowed into Luo Fan's body, circulated quickly, and finally rushed into the Tai E Dao fruit in Luo Fan's lower abdomen. As the speck of dust rushed in, the Tai E Dao fruit slightly shook a few times, and in the blink of an eye, it underwent some kind of extremely mysterious change. The magic power units that made up the Primordial Unity Dao fruit, which were constantly changing their shapes, seemed to have gained a very mysterious form of transformation. It really works. It seems like the Tai E Dao fruit's profoundness is far more profound than I imagined. Luo Fan let out a long breath, and a faint smile appeared on his face. In 10 years, he had completely sorted out the massacre intent and completely integrated it into the Dao fruit's Dao scripture. There were a total of 129,600 massacre intents in the entire primordial world. Relatively speaking, the 365 massacre intents were only an insignificant part. However, it was this insignificant part that made Luo Fan overturn his understanding of the massacre intent when he saw the massacre of life. The massacre intent was far more profound than he imagined. The things contained in it were far more than what he knew. Originally, he knew that the massacre intent could only enrich the martial Dao, but it was only an extremely narrow view. The massacre intent was all-encompassing, and there were profoundness that could almost be connected with any divine ability or magic arts. Every scroll in the Dao fruit's Dao scripture could actually find nutrients in the massacre intent, and could be enriched by combining with the massacre intent. Whether it was the illusion Dao scroll, calculation scroll, Qi nurturing scroll, primordial spirit scroll, or even a most impossible purification scroll, it could actually absorb nutrients from the massacre intent. After 10 years of comprehending and integrating the massacre intent, Luo Fan's Dao fruit's Dao scripture had thickened by more than 10%. If he hadn't attained the Tai E Dao fruit, he was afraid that he would have to spend tens of thousands of years to complete this 10 years of work. This massacre intent is so mysterious. It seems like Ao In and Ao Lai's fated chances are better than I imagined. Luo Fan's mind flashed with this trace of emotion. Subsequently, he raised his hand and pointed. The long sword image that was wrapped with 365 halos suddenly shrank and submerged into the colorless and transparent silk. As it was submerged, an ordinary long sword image appeared on the silk, and the 365 halos had already disappeared. It seemed as though the silk only had the simplest and most ordinary longsword drawn on it. Only when Luo Fan's sun and moon true pupils shone on it could he see that the 365 massacre intents were slowly circulating and circulating. Chapter 332. A billion living beings, begging to follow before Jiang, he comprehended the 365 massacre intents. He didn't even have the time to think about it. Luo Fan's plan was to pass the massacre intent to the Ao Lai and Ao Yin dragons, allowing them to receive the most complete and original massacre intent. This was so that their magical treasures would carry the massacre intent, which would increase their destructive power. However, after comprehending the 365 massacre intent, he had no choice but to change his plan. After all, this massacre intent didn't look like much, but the information contained within it was extremely complicated and profound. Without a certain level of cultivation, it was impossible to maintain one's sense of self within this boundless massacre intent. With the cultivation of the Ao Lai and Ao Yin dragons, the moment they received this massacre intent, they would probably be engrossed in it and would no longer be able to maintain their sense of self. For this reason, Luo Fan had no choice but to seal the massacre intent with a mystical technique. After going through this seal by Luo Fan, the massacre intent seemed to have been added with a layer of shackles. It wasn't like before, where one could easily comprehend it by just inserting one's consciousness into it. Instead, one had to rely on one's own cultivation level to continuously undo the shackles that Luo Fan had placed on it. Through this process of undoing the shackles, one would be able to comprehend the traces of massacre intent that leaked out when the shackles were undone. As such, even though the difficulty of comprehending the massacre intent had increased by 100 times, one didn't have to worry about losing oneself due to the massacre intent being too profound. Casually rolling up the silk, Luo Fan kept it into his universe within his sleeve. After keeping the silk, his mind moved slightly. It was as if there was some kind of existence that was telling him something. After a slight calculation, he knew where it should be. Without any hesitation, he stood up and took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the inner hall of the limitless Void Palace. However, this time, he didn't appear at the peak of Buzhou Mountain. Instead, he appeared hundreds of billions of miles away from Buzhou Mountain, in a giant lake that was covered in fog. This was the place he had specially prepared for Lin Tianan and the other humans and demons who had ascended from the spirit space. It's already this strong? Luo Fan was surprised when he stepped into the lake. It turned out that the surface of the lake, which was as wide as an ocean, was filled with traces of living beings. The entire lake was enveloped by a large formation, isolating it from the outside world. However, at this moment, the fog caused by the formation was filled with the aura of living beings. Under Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon, countless scenes of living beings flashed across the depths of his pupils, directly passing through his pupils and into his mind. These were scenes of the past tens of thousands of years in this lake. Only tens of thousands of years have passed in the primordial world. However, tens of millions of years had passed in that spirit space. In such a long time, even though it was extremely difficult for the living beings in the spirit space to ascend, due to the accumulation of time, the number of living beings that had ascended from the spirit space had reached an extremely terrifying level. Such a terrifying number of living beings that had ascended, coupled with the number of living beings that had been constantly reproducing in the primordial world, had unknowingly increased the number of intelligent living beings in the lake to more than 1 billion. Although the strongest among them, except for Tianan, is only equivalent to the deity returning realm, and there are less than 10 people who have reached this realm, it's still a rather powerful force. Such thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. His current location was in the middle of the lake, on the island where the Primal Chaos bronze tablet was located. This island was located close to the center of the lake. The reason why Luo Fan was able to move so quickly from the Void Wuji Palace to this place was because he used the connection between the spirit space and this place to directly cross the void. He did not use a mysterious magical power like teleportation. This lake was quite vast. Although there were 1 billion living beings cultivating in it, it did not seem narrow at all. Instead, it seemed to be vast but sparsely populated. Although there were auras left behind by living beings everywhere, the distribution of living beings at the same time was extremely sparse. Among the 1 billion living beings that cultivated with intelligence, due to their different interests or understanding of the Great Tao, there were 2 general cultivation paths. One was the martial cultivation that Luo Fan taught to Lin Tian Nan, and then Lin Tian Nan passed it down. The other was the cultivation method that Luo Fan had created based on the cultivation method of the minor Kiliacosm cultivation lineage. Both of them could be said to originate from Luo Fan, and their cultivation paths were organized by Luo Fan. It could be said that they came from the same source. For martial cultivation, Luo Fan had passed down the martial scripture. For cultivation, Luo Fan had passed down the 4 realms of the primordial spirit. Among them, the mortal realm, saint realm, transformative realm, spirit gathering realm, fate-changing realm, and heaven martial realm were the 6 great realms of martial cultivation. Each of these 6 great realms was divided into 9 levels. Once the 54th level was cultivated to perfection, it would be equivalent to cultivating the great Tao of the primordial spirit into the primordial spirit, cultivating the great Tao of runes into the talisman god, and cultivating the great Tao of patterns into the immortal body. As for cultivation, it was divided into 4 realms: refining essence into Qi, refining Qi into spirit, refining spirit into void, and refining void into Tao. These were the 4 primordial spirit realms. Each great realm was divided into 36 small realms. If the 36 realms of refining Qi into spirit were cultivated to perfection, it would be equivalent to forming a primordial spirit, achieving immortality and the power to live as long as heaven and earth. Once one reached the void refinement and Tao integration stage, one would place one's primordial spirit in the void and reach the realm of immortality. This realm looks similar to immortality, but it's like the difference between clouds and mud. Immortality means that nothing can break it. As long as one succeeds in cultivating it, they can only be sealed and cannot be destroyed. They are immortal. Immortality meant that one could live for a long time without being affected by external forces, but one could still be killed. The 2 cultivation methods were different. Among them, martial cultivation reached perfection of the 9th level of the heaven martial realm, which was equivalent to the independent immortal realm. It seemed far inferior to cultivation, but the speed of cultivation was fast and the power after cultivation was great. Although the 4 primordial spirit realms seemed to lead to immortality, it was extremely difficult to cultivate. It was almost impossible to succeed. At most, one could only cultivate to perfection of the heaven martial realm. It could be said that both cultivation methods had their own advantages. The choice would depend on the cultivator's will. The cultivation path of the creatures in the lake flashed through his mind. Luo Fan's eyes reflected the cultivation path of the 1 billion creatures in the lake. Looking at it like this, he couldn't help but sigh. Among the 1 billion living beings, only 5%, which was 5%, cultivated the martial arts technique he had passed down. Most of them, which was the remaining 95% of living beings, were cultivators. They cultivated the primordial soul 4 realms that seemed to lead to eternity. They're all people who bite off more than they can chew. What a pity. However, this is good as well. In this way, those who cultivate martial arts are all good seedlings with strong wills that are hard to be shaken. It can be said that the martial cultivation lineage that I've passed down is not in vain. Then another thought flashed through his mind, and he thought of finding joy in bitterness. At that moment, Lin Tianan had already cultivated to the first level of the heaven realm. His cultivation realm and strength were equivalent to the crossing disaster realm. Although it was only equivalent to just stepping into the crossing disaster realm, within the 1 billion living beings, he could already be called an invincible existence. With a thought directly passed through some mysterious connection and entered Lin Tiannan's mind. Lin Tiannan was currently lecturing the 8 disciples he had accepted over the years. Suddenly, he felt his body shake. While his disciples were still in shock, Lin Tiannan suddenly revealed a look of ecstasy and laughed out loud. You can all reflect on the martial arts that I taught you. I still have something to do, so I need to leave for a while. Teacher, please go ahead. The disciples quickly stood up and bowed. Lin Tiannan waved his hand and stepped into the air. As his primordial chi surged, it was as if the ground had shrunk to an inch. With one step, he could travel 10 miles. Not long after, he arrived at the mountain that was thousands of miles away. Compared to tens of thousands of years ago, Lin Tiannan's appearance did not change much. However, his body carried an extremely mysterious aura. It was as if he was constantly communicating with the heaven and earth. He was constantly comprehending some kind of supreme technique. Every inch of his muscles, every inch of his bones, and every pore in his body was filled with an indescribably strong power. This strong power could almost destroy the heavens and the earth, move mountains, and fill oceans. It was as if it could directly tear apart the sky if it exploded. This was the power of a cultivator who cultivated to the heaven martial realm. Although Lin Tiannan was a post-celestial being, the power of the martial scripture that he cultivated at the crossing disaster realm was not any weaker than the power of Luo Fu when he was in the same realm. From this, it could be seen how mysterious and profound the martial scripture was. Although the 4 realms of the primordial soul led to eternity, in terms of power, it was far from being comparable to the martial scripture. From this, it could be seen that when Luo Fan found out that so many people chose the 4 realms of the primordial soul, he had such a reaction. When Lin Tiannan arrived at the top of the mountain, he immediately saw Luo Fan. His eyes couldn't help but turn red and tears instantly flowed down. He knelt down from afar and prostrated. Unfilial disciple pays his respects to teacher. May teacher's life be boundless. Get up. There's no need to be so courteous. Come up and talk. Luo Fan smiled. He waved his hand, and an invisible force lifted Lin Tiannan up. Lin Tiannan's face was full of tears. He choked and said, "Yes." As he said this, he quickly walked in front of Luo Fan. When Luo Fan saw Lin Tiannan's emotional expression, a warm feeling welled up in his heart. You're not bad. To be able to reach the first level of the heaven realm in a few tens of thousands of years, you have worked hard. Luo Fan smiled. I am ashamed. It took me tens of thousands of years to break through to the fate-changing realm. I am ashamed to face teacher. Lin Tiannan said shamefully. Ha! You broke through to the heaven realm from the fate-changing realm. That is equivalent to the adversity-passing realm of the ancient world. That is already not simple. Why do you need to be ashamed? Luo Fan laughed. Teacher, you praise me too much. Lin Tiannan's expression finally relaxed. Ever since the primal chaos bronze tablet was erected on this mountain, it had been treated as a holy land by the 1 billion living beings who had ascended. Although there were living beings who paid attention to this place, they would only come up when someone ascended. Therefore, at this moment, it was very quiet. No one disturbed the conversation between teacher and disciple. I accepted 8 disciples without your permission. Teacher, please punish me. Lin Tiannan suddenly thought of something and hurriedly knelt on the ground. Fine, fine. You accepted your own disciples. Why are you asking for punishment? Luo Fan smiled. He didn't mind. Although he had already accepted 4 disciples and a son, he felt that he was very casual. In reality, Luo Fan's standards for accepting disciples were quite strict. If there was no special opportunity, he would definitely not accept any disciple. Therefore, to him, The disciples that Lin Tian Nan accepted had nothing to do with him. He did not treat them as his own disciples, let alone give them any benefits. When Lin Tian Nan heard Luo Fan's words, he instantly knew what Luo Fan was trying to express. His face paled and he knocked his head on the ground. With a loud bang, the ground shook slightly. "Teacher, please be merciful. I know I was wrong. I hope that teacher can give them some pointers for the sake of their difficult cultivation." Luo Fan's eyebrows furrowed. He waved his hand, and a wave of energy lifted Lin Tian Nan up. No matter how hard he tried, he could not kneel down again. "Don't say too much. They are not fated to be my disciples," Luo Fan said calmly. When Lin Tian Nan heard Luo Fan's words, he knew that Luo Fan had already made up his mind. Even if he knocked his head until it broke, he would not change his mind. Lin Tian Nan's face paled. He opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. In the end, he could only helplessly say, "I understand." Luo Fan looked at Lin Tian Nan's expression and couldn't bear it anymore. He said, "Even though they are not fated to be my disciples, they are fated to be your disciples. You can accept them as disciples and teach them martial arts. You can even teach them the martial arts that I have taught you, but there is no restriction." When Lin Tian Nan heard Luo Fan's words, he couldn't help but be stunned. What was the difference between this and Master directly accepting them as disciples? Why did Master have to separate them? There is a difference. You will understand in the future. Luo Fan shook his head and changed the topic. Even though Lin Tian Nan was confused, he knew that there was no way to change the situation. He could only calm himself down and bow. Over the past tens of thousands of years, this disciple has specially opened up a mansion for Master. Please come with me. Luo Fan's sun and moon true eyes were powerful. With just a glance at the lake, he knew where the mansion was and what it looked like. He couldn't help but smile and say, "That's fine. I'll follow you." Lin Tian Nan was overjoyed and was about to lead Luo Fan to the mansion. At this moment, a strange roar suddenly sounded from all directions and rolled towards Luo Fan. This roar was extremely strange. It sounded like the roar of some kind of creature, but it also seemed to shake the heavens and earth. It was as if there was endless lightning flashing in the sky. "So it's you." When Luo Fan heard this roar, he knew what it was. Although this roar was very different from before, it was actually the tortoise-shaped innate god that he had sealed here to protect the living beings in the lake. Great deity, you have come. I beg for great deity to take me in. I am willing to follow great deity." A deep voice suddenly entered Luo Fan's ears. Luo Fan faintly smiled as he brought Lin Tian Nan with him. With a step, they arrived at the depths of the ground, where the turtle was. At this moment, the turtle-shaped innate god had already grown to an extremely shocking level. The turtle shell was tens of thousands of miles wide, and there were many mysterious and strange symbols carved on it. The two eyes on the turtle shell were emitting a sincere and grateful light. This turtle-shaped innate god had an ability that other innate gods didn't. That was, it could restrain its own power. Aura. It could fuse its own aura with the surrounding earth. Because of this, when Luo Fan was looking around with his sun-moon true pupils, he didn't notice it. Of course, Luo Fan's attention was mostly on the 1 billion creatures above, but from this, it could be seen that the turtle-shaped innate god's ability to hide was very strong. "I didn't expect you to be so lucky to be enlightened in such a short period of time. Tell me, why do you want to follow me?" Luo Fan smiled. When Lin Tian Nan arrived, his eyes were calm. Occasionally, he would look at Luo Fan with endless respect. Over the years, he had experienced the strength of this tortoise-shaped innate god countless times. But this turtle-shaped innate god was subdued by his master. It was his master who asked him to stay here to protect them. The technique imparted by great deity is too profound. Even though I only understood a part of it, I still gained a lot of benefits. Now, I am only one step away from achieving a breakthrough. Therefore, I know that great deity's power is beyond imagination. Therefore, I want to follow great deity. The turtle-shaped innate god said, "I see. Luo Fan's sun-moon true pupils turned and saw that the power inside this innate god's body had accumulated to a limit. It was on the verge of transforming. If the transformation was successful, he would be able to refine his own body and materialize it. At the same time, he would be able to cultivate the body of Earth. He would be able to borrow the supreme power of the untainted land to do whatever he wanted. At that time, it would be equivalent to attaining Tao. You actually comprehended such a technique. You are very talented. It will be a waste to let you guard this place. Fine, you can follow me to Mount Bujo and face the great tribulation of heaven and earth together in a few thousand years. There is no need to talk about following me. Luo Fan smiled. He naturally knew why the turtle-shaped innate god wanted to follow him. Even though the innate god's technique was comprehended from the techniques he passed on to him, it was not complete. Even though he was on the verge of metamorphosis, this barrier was like a natural chasm. Even with the knowledge and information he had accumulated, it was practically impossible for him to overcome this barrier. If he didn't have the guidance of others, it would probably take him countless yuanwees before he could break through this barrier. The reason why he followed me was for my guidance. Chapter 333. Chapter 373. Heavenly Hurricane, the tortoise-shaped, innate god heard Luo Fan's words and did not refuse. Instead, he cried out in joy, "Great Immortal is merciful." At the same time, his body moved, and an incomparably dense, earthy yellow light surged out of his body. Under the shroud of the earthy yellow light, his huge body that had infinite shocking power began to shrink rapidly. In a short while, it had shrunk from its original size of 10,000 miles to 10 meters. Although it was still quite big, it was tens of thousands of times smaller than before. Although it had shrunk by tens of thousands of times, the power that its body emitted was not the slightest bit weaker than when it was 30,000 miles long. Instead, because its body had shrunk, the power that its body emitted was even stronger, causing Lin Tiannan's mind to be even more shocked. Luo Fan had already achieved Tai Dao fruit, so his cultivation realm was far more than tens of thousands of times that of this tortoise-shaped, innate god. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be shocked by the power that the tortoise-shaped, innate god emitted. He only smiled and raised his hand to cover the void. With a slight thought, he brought the tortoise-shaped, innate god and Lin Tiannan to the island with the primal chaos bronze tablet. So carefree. This is the Yuan Qi outside. It's so different from the one underground. He took a deep breath and could not help but sigh. Although his body had shrunk to 10 meters, his voice was still very loud. It rumbled directly into Luo Fan's and Lin Tiannan's eardrums, causing Lin Tiannan's ears to feel uncomfortable. At this moment, he was not lying on the ground. Instead, his body was floating 3 feet and 3 inches above the ground. He moved his limbs and tail slightly, creating a mysterious power that gently pushed his body in the void. Luo Fan smiled and asked, "Could it be that you have never left that cave all these years?" I'm ashamed. I've only comprehended the earth body cultivation method out of the countless wondrous techniques great deity left behind. I don't know anything about burrowing underground. If I wanted to come out, I'm afraid I would destroy this island, so I didn't dare to move. I only came out with great deity's help, you said rather shamefully. Although he had the ability to change his size, the cave was completely sealed. If he wanted to come out, he didn't know how to burrow into the ground, so he could only blast open the ground and directly open up a path. In that case, the island would naturally undergo a huge change under the impact of its power, and the entire island might even disappear because of it. Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Lin Tiannan was listening to the conversation between Luo Fan and the innate god Qi when he heard this. He couldn't help but feel grateful and quickly bowed to express his gratitude. It's fine. However, I don't dare to call myself your senior. You are the disciple of a great immortal, so you can just call me Ho. Ho laughed. I don't dare. Senior has existed since ancient times. How could this disciple dare to slight you? Lin Tiannan hurriedly replied. No. You shook his head. Fellow Taoist, there's no need to decline. The title is just a title. Just accept it. Why do you care? Luo Fan said with a faint smile. Hearing this, you didn't say anything else. Through the tens of thousands of years of cultivation, the turtle-shaped Xian Tian god's body grew to thousands of miles in size. Compared to the last time Luo Fan saw it, it was at least 100 times bigger. The amount of power that this giant body could contain was unimaginably terrifying. It was at least 10,000 times stronger than a living being at the peak of the disaster-passing stage. Therefore, even though he was still one step away from refining his body and achieving immortality, he was already so powerful that normal scattered immortals could not fight against him. Even though he was still one step away from refining his body, achieving immortality, he was already so powerful that normal scattered immortals could not fight against him. Once he breaks through, even though he won't be able to reach the peak of the scattered immortal realm like Luo Fu, he won't just be a beginner scattered immortal. If he didn't make any mistakes in his cultivation, his future would be limitless. Luo Fan knew this. Seeing that you didn't say anything else, he smiled and asked, I wonder what technique you're cultivating? Can I take a look? That's all I want. Though he was simple and honest, he wasn't an idiot. Hearing what Luo Fan said, he knew that Luo Fan wanted to teach him how to cultivate. He was overjoyed. He was even willing to lower his status to follow Luo Fan. Wasn't this the reason why he wanted to cultivate? As soon as he said that, he suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a khaki-colored, liquid-like stream of air that rushed out of his mouth. This muddy stream of air was the purest earth yuan qi. It was the source of the earth and was formed by the condensation of all kinds of earth yuan qi. Compared to chaotic yuan qi, it had its own advantages and was quite mysterious. After the stream of air appeared, it began to twist, condense, and outline. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into an extremely complicated and mysterious technique recorded in the Pangu characters. Earth Body Cultivation Technique. This was the name of this technique. Luo Fan's true pupils of sun and moon shone on it, and the entire earth cultivation technique was absorbed into his mind in an instant. With a turn of his mind, specks of light flashed. He already knew the mystery of the origin of this technique, and also knew how to improve it. Luo Fan sighed inwardly after reading this magic art. He's really blessed by nature. He can actually create such a mysterious magic art with only basic knowledge. It seems that any innate deity is by no means simple. Of course, although this technique was quite mysterious and could even give Luo Fan the body of earth, which he had never seen before, and could extract endless power from the untainted land at any time, it also had many flaws and was far inferior to any of the techniques created by Luo Fan. With a slight thought of Luo Fan, the whole technique was completely scattered in his mind and instantly reassembled. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into another mysterious and unpredictable technique. The name Earth Body Cultivation Technique naturally did not change, but the details of the entire technique had changed beyond recognition. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed, and the void changed naturally. The earth energy spurted out by the Danglong collapsed in an instant, and then quickly reassembled, showing another technique. This method was not similar to the earth body cultivation method at all, but it was of the same origin. The final result was also the supreme earth body, but it was more mysterious and complicated. The earth body that was cultivated was more powerful, and the earth chi that was cultivated was purer and contained more mysteries. As soon as the turtle-shaped innate deity saw this technique, he suddenly froze. Waves of earthy yellow gas continuously gushed out from his body, gradually turning into a clump of earthy yellow clouds that completely wrapped around his body. Only 2 Hmong bean-sized eyes were left staring at the technique that was also condensed from the yellow gas in front of him. When Luo Fan saw Danglong's reaction, he knew that Danglong was moved by the technique that he created. Danglong's cultivation realm suddenly increased slightly, and he actually broke through the bottleneck that prevented him from breaking through. At this moment, he was in the middle of breaking through. It's not good to break through here. As Luo Fan sighed at Donglong's talent, such a thought flashed through his mind. As he thought about this, he raised his hand and pointed. His mount, Nebula, directly rushed out from his universe in his sleeve. With a stretch of its body, it formed a light barrier that wrapped around Luo Fan, Lin Tiannan, and Ding Long, who was in the middle of breaking through. With a sudden shake, Ding Long disappeared without a trace. After Nebula was refined by Luo Fan, its speed had reached an unimaginable level. In the blink of an eye, it had already brought the three of them to a flat land that was 300 million miles away from the lake. After landing, Ding Long could no longer suppress himself. His entire body rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, he had expanded to the size of his original body. After his body expanded, the mysterious technique that Luo Fan had created was naturally swallowed by the huge earth energy. However, it did not matter. Innate deities were all blessed by the heavens. Having a photographic memory was only normal. This technique had already been completely memorized by Ding Long, so there was no need to leave any words behind. The earthy yellow cloud that wrapped around Ding Long filled the world. Following these changes, wisps of strange energies began to emerge from the ground within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. This energy was a faint earthy yellow color, but its density was far less than the cloud that wrapped around Donglong's body. The energy that emerged from the ground rushed into the earthy yellow cloud. After spinning a few times, it completely merged into the cloud and was assimilated by the cloud. At this time, the nebula still had not disappeared. Under Luo Fan's control, with a roll and a push, it had already sent Lin Tiannan and Luo Fan to the top of his head. With a shake of his body, he was already 10,000 miles above the ground, avoiding the earthy yellow cloud. Master, what exactly is going on? Lin Tiannan was extremely curious. Seeing such a change occur, he asked for guidance. This fellow's cultivation realm has improved and is already at the threshold of a breakthrough. I'm afraid that his body is currently in the process of quickly adjusting. Luo Fan smiled. Breakthrough. Hearing this, Lin Tiannan's eyes revealed a look of understanding, but at the same time, there was a look of envy. Look, it's here. Luo Fan smiled. Hearing this, Lin Tiannan hurriedly looked in the direction that Luo Fan was pointing. In the sky, he saw that in the sky, a cloud that was 1,000,000 miles in radius was gradually forming. Ding Long cultivated the Great Earth Body cultivation method, but it needed to constantly absorb the various types of energy contained within the earth to nourish itself. Normally, this would not be much of a problem. However, in the instant that it broke through, its body underwent an intense transformation. The amount of suction it produced was tens of thousands of times greater than normal. Such a suction force that was tens of thousands of times greater than normal would cause irreparable damage to the earth. Because of this, the great Tao of chaos would naturally be drawn in and send down a heavenly tribulation to punish Ding Long for its actions. If Ding Long survived this heavenly tribulation, it meant that it had the qualifications to absorb this much energy. If it could not, then the endless amount of energy absorbed by Ding Long would naturally dissipate and return to the earth. However, Luo Fan did not mention this to Lin Tiannan. The cloud in the sky was pitch black, and endless muffled sounds were constantly emitted from it. An indescribable pressure of heaven and earth descended from above. Everything within a radius of 10 million miles was affected by the pressure of this cloud, and the yuan qi in the air seemed to stagnate. Under this indescribable pressure, Ding Long also felt the change and increased the speed at which it absorbed the endless amount of energy from the earth below it to its maximum. In an instant, the speed at which the endless earthen yellow energy seeped out from the earth increased by 100 times. The cloud tumbled faster and faster. Watch carefully. Although the martial arts that you cultivate focuses on cultivating your own body, you also need to absorb energy from the outside world. Once you cultivate to a certain level, you will also encounter a heavenly tribulation. Watching the scene of a heavenly tribulation will be of great help to your future heavenly tribulation. Luo Fan said to Lin Tian-nan. Disciple understands. Lin Tian-nan said solemnly. Regarding the heavenly tribulation that one would encounter while cultivating, the martial scripture had already mentioned it. Lin Tian-nan already knew that when he broke through to the 9th level of the heaven realm, a heavenly tribulation would appear. Hearing Luo Fan's words, he was not surprised and instead began to seriously observe. Luo Fan smiled slightly. Seeing Lin Tian-nan's nervous expression, he said, "There is no need to be too nervous. The heavenly tribulation that you will face in the future will not be comparable to his heavenly tribulation. There is no need to worry too much. Disciple will remember." Lin Tian-nan said. Kacha. A huge sound of thunder suddenly surged out from the cloud. The sky that was originally covered by the cloud suddenly lit up. The entire world seemed to tremble slightly. At the same time, a bolt of purple lightning that was tens of thousands of meters in diameter descended from the sky like a pillar that held up the heavens. It charged straight into the khaki cloud. A huge roar came from the cloud. It showed that the swan and I had received a huge impact from the lightning. It was unknown if it was injured or not. Seeing this lightning, Lin Tian-nan's expression changed slightly. The power of this lightning was simply too terrifying. Just by sensing it from so far away, he could roughly guess how powerful this bolt of lightning was. According to his guess, not to mention a lightning that was as big as a pillar of heaven, even a small bolt of lightning the size of a thumb was not something he could withstand. This is only a test, and it is already so strong. How terrifying will the next one be? Such thoughts flashed through Lin Tian-nan's mind, and he naturally paid more attention to it. Kacha! 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 The sound of thunder continuously rang out, and the entire sky shook continuously. In the dark sky, there was an incomparably dazzling light that flickered. The lightning in the cloud seemed to have been nurtured to its limit. Thousands of lightning bolts that were tens of thousands of feet in diameter directly struck down from the cloud and directly charged into the earthen yellow cloud. The brownish-yellow cloud continued to churn and tremble. Only continuous roars could be heard from within. The roars were filled with unyielding anger in an imposing manner that was as heavy as a mountain. After the thousands of bolts of purple lightning entered the cloud churned for quite a while before it finally calmed down. However, the cloud seemed to have traces of purple light on it at this moment. It was as if it had already absorbed the thousands of lightning bolts into it. The frequency of the muffled sounds coming from the cloud in the sky became even faster. After a while, thousands of purple lightning bolts, accompanied by thousands of pitch-black tornadoes, descended from the sky. The thousands of lightning bolts directly charged towards the earthen yellow cloud. The thousands of tornadoes wrapped around the earthen yellow cloud from all directions. They connected the sky and the earth like thousands of pillars that supported the heavens and the earth. Each of these thousands of tornadoes was at least 10,000 feet in diameter. Lined up together, the momentum was so great that it was like the end of the world, as if the heavens and the earth were collapsing. Lin Tian-nan looked at this scene and was even more shocked in his heart. His body could not help but tremble. Although the scene was incomparably shocking, it did not have much of an impact on Luo Fan. At this moment, although Luo Fan was observing every detail of Tian-nan's tribulation, he also split a portion of his consciousness to pay attention to Lin Tian-nan. Seeing Lin Tian-nan's performance, he sighed in his heart. He knew that Lin Tian-nan was already frightened by the might of this heavenly tribulation. If he was unable to overcome the fear of heavenly tribulation in the future, his chances of successfully passing the tribulation in the future would be greatly reduced. Even so, he did not help Lin Tian-nan. If he could not even overcome the fear of heavenly tribulation, even if he passed the tribulation in the future, his future prospects would be limited. The path of cultivation was difficult and unpredictable. How could it be as simple as heavenly tribulation? After this thought flashed through his mind, he once again focused his attention on the scene of Tian-nan's tribulation. He saw that after the thousands of tornadoes touched the ground, They instantly converged and quickly twisted towards the earthen yellow cloud in the center. The wind contained within the tornadoes was obviously not ordinary wind. Instead, it was an incomparably sharp and tenacious heavenly astral hurricane. Even a small wisp of it was enough to blow apart a living creature's flesh, revealing their bones. The power of these thousands of tornadoes, which were tens of thousands of feet in diameter, could be imagined. As the yellow cloud was twisted by the tornadoes, strands of earthen yellow air were torn apart and absorbed into the tornadoes, causing the originally pitch-black tornadoes to gradually be dyed with a faint earthen yellow color. The roars from within the earthen yellow cloud became even more intense. An indescribable wave was emitted from the yellow cloud, instantly spreading to every inch of space within 1,000,000 miles. This wave contained an incomparably mysterious power. Under this wave, the thousands of tornadoes that connected the heavens and the earth instantly collapsed. The heavenly astral hurricane that formed the thousands of tornadoes collapsed and wreaked havoc in all directions, directly blowing away 10 miles of the land within 1,000,000 miles. Among them, a large heavenly astral hurricane attacked Luo Fan and the others, who had already dodged to the side. The speed of this heavenly astral hurricane was extremely fast, almost as if it had teleported. In one instant, it was tens of thousands of miles away. In the next instant, it had already arrived in front of Luo Fan, directly pouncing towards them. Luo Fan did not make a move. Instead, he moved his thoughts slightly. Chapter 334. Chapter 374. A great tribulation following that, countless sinister forces descended from the huge tribulation cloud that spanned 1,000,000 miles. Apart from the various types of astral winds, lightning, fire, heavenly fiends, heavy water, golden blades, and other physical attacks, there were even Zizai, Tianma, and supreme heart demons that had been drawn over by the tribulation. This tortoise innate god, Qi, was not simple either. Its foundation was unimaginably robust. Countless roars rang out from the endless attacks, and the cloud that spanned thousands of miles constantly shrank under these attacks. However, it was not destroyed by the boundless sinister forces that the tribulation cloud loved. Instead, it continuously transformed and improved. This was the largest tribulation that Luo Fan had ever seen. It lasted for 9 days and 9 nights. During these 9 days and 9 nights, the sinister attacks that descended from the tribulation cloud probably numbered in the trillions. Moreover, every attack was enough to completely destroy an expert like Lin Tiannan. Not even a trace of his soul or life source would be left. Time passed, and it was now the 9th day since the beginning of the tortoise innate god's tribulation. In other words, the tribulation was about to end. As time passed, the tribulation cloud in the sky had already shrunk to a radius of 10,000 feet. Compared to when the tribulation cloud had first appeared, it had shrunk by thousands of times. At the same time, below the tribulation cloud, where the tortoise innate god Qi was, the earthy yellow cloud had shrunk from its original radius of 10,000 miles to 10,000 feet. It had shrunk by hundreds of thousands of times. However, although the earthy yellow cloud had shrunk by so many times, its essence had undergone some mysterious changes. Although it had shrunk by countless times, its quality, purity, and degree of condensation were also many times stronger than 9 days ago. At this moment, the earthy yellow cloud gave off an aura that was as heavy as the vast earth. It seemed to have solidified, covering the surrounding 10,000 miles. Even the khaki-colored cloud seemed to be crystal clear. It was as if a tiny bit of it would turn into an incomparably precious and wonderful piece of topaz. The last wave of attacks is coming. Luo Fan looked at the changes in the tribulation cloud in the sky and made a slight calculation. Then, he said to Lin Tiannan, who was beside him. When Lin Tiannan heard Luo Fan's words, his body trembled slightly. His originally incomparably serious gaze became even more serious. To Lin Tiannan, The entire 9 days and 9 nights of heavenly tribulation were like opening up a whole new world, a whole new door. In the past, although he knew that the great wasteland contained a supreme power and that comprehending it would give him endless gains, he had never directly felt this supreme power. He could only infer the existence of this supreme power from the various powers that Luo Fan had displayed, and from his occasional comprehension, he could only sense the tip of the iceberg of this supreme power. However, during these 9 days and 9 nights, the tribulation cloud in the sky had completely displayed this supreme power. Among the attacks that came from the tribulation cloud, almost every wave of attack, even the smallest attack unit, was enough to make Lin Tian then exhausted all of his energy and unable to withstand it. It was enough to kill him and scatter his soul. Witnessing the supreme power of the heavenly tribulation, Lin Tian Nan had unknowingly planted a seed of fear in the depths of his heart. This seed of fear made him feel a faint fear of the heavenly tribulation that he would encounter in the future. Luo Fan's sun and moon true pupils could even transcend time and space to see the past and the future. Naturally, he could see Lin Tian Nan's thoughts. He could even clearly see the seed of fear in the depths of his heart. When he saw the seed of fear, a trace of disappointment flashed through his mind. At the same time, he was secretly happy that he had brought Lin Tian Nan to watch the scene of the tortoise-shaped innate god undergoing the heavenly tribulation. If he didn't watch it, when he really encountered the heavenly tribulation in the future, he would have to face the supreme power of the chaotic world without any preparation. The danger that he would encounter would probably be many times greater. Although the seed of fear was planted in Lin Tian Nan's heart, if he could refine this seed of fear, his cultivation realm would naturally increase greatly. Even if he couldn't refine this seed of fear, he wouldn't be able to draw out his own heavenly tribulation. Thus, he wouldn't have to worry about being killed by the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the tribulation cloud in the sky suddenly condensed. In the blink of an eye, it had already condensed from its original radius of 10,000 feet into a black ball that seemed to contain boundless darkness. It seemed like a piece of nothingness, but it also seemed like it contained the billions of things in the universe. After this black ball condensed, the void seemed to pause for a moment. Time also seemed to pause for a moment. Then, an incomparably terrifying power enveloped every inch of space within a 10,000-mile radius. Even Lin Tian Nan, who was far away, felt this power and his body trembled slightly. Following the appearance of this power, the 10 black balls suddenly trembled and quickly descended as if they had teleported. In almost an instant, they crossed tens of thousands of miles and charged into the earthy yellow cloud that had already undergone a transformation. The instant the black ball entered, the earthy yellow cloud was directly dyed a deep black. At the same time, within this cloud, the roars of the Hui became incomparably mournful, incomparably painful, and even contained boundless anger and unwillingness. The earthen yellow energy surging out of the ground within a radius of 1,000,000 miles, abruptly sped up during this process. In the blink of an eye, the earthy yellow energy that gushed out from the cloud was probably comparable to the earth energy that gushed out from the Huey's body 9 days ago. This boundless earth energy surged straight into the cloud that had already been dyed black. It continuously battled with the black matter, collided, annihilated, and assimilated. Gold and silver light flashed in Luo Fan's eyes. In the blink of an eye, he had already seen through the essence of the black and yellow light. This was clearly the result of the heavenly tribulation's organic combination of the billions of attacks that had appeared over the past 9 days and 9 nights, creating a mysterious and indescribably sinister power that was difficult to describe with words. This sinister power entered the power of the Hui that had already undergone a transformation. It wanted to scatter the power of the Hui and kill the almost completely transformed Hui. It wanted to disperse the earth energy that was occupied by the Hui and return it to the world. Crackling sounds rang out continuously, like the sound of the great Tao, like the destruction of heaven and earth, like the shattering of the void, constantly coming from that location. Although the power of the heavenly tribulation was terrifying, it was after all water without a source. With the power of the Huey's own body and its roughly formed earth body, it could continuously obtain the boundless earth energy from the great desolate wasteland to replenish itself. It was able to gradually disperse the power of the heavenly tribulation and expel the boundless sinister power. After 6 hours, a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar erupted from the earth-yellow cloud that had returned to its crystal-clear state. The earth within a radius of tens of millions of kilometers trembled in the roar, and the ground within a radius of 100 kilometers, which had sunk due to the countless attacks of the heavenly tribulation, gradually rose up. The sunken ground gradually rose up and gradually returned to its original state. As the sunken ground returned, the earth-yellow energy that had surged out of the earth within a radius of 10,000 kilometers gradually thinned and finally disappeared completely. At the same time, the earth-yellow cloud gradually shrank, revealing the object within it. It was a burly man who was 12 feet tall, with bulging muscles all over his body. He wore a short, tortoise-shell shirt and had a simple and honest look on his face. "Ha ha! Come on, come on. I'm not afraid of you. Ha ha!" After the burly man appeared, he threw his head back and roared with laughter. A ring of incomparably strange fluctuations radiated from his body. Following these fluctuations, the earth within a radius of 10,000 kilometers seemed to undergo some very strange changes, but it was impossible to describe exactly what the changes were. Luo Fan smiled faintly. His eyes shone, and he already knew that the Earth's energy within a radius of 10,000 kilometers had become one with Danglong. It breathed as Danglong breathed, and moved as Danglong moved. The specific manifestation of this was that the gravity within a radius of 10,000 kilometers could be changed at will by Danglong. The body of the Earth is indeed mysterious. I didn't expect it to have such an ability. Luo Fan couldn't help but sigh. With a thought, the nebula under his feet turned slightly, and in the blink of an eye, it had already crossed tens of thousands of kilometers and landed in front of Danglong. After landing, the nebula's body trembled, and it gradually shrank, automatically flying into Luo Fan's universe in the sleeve. Seeing Luo Fan's descent, Danglong was slightly startled. He hurriedly knelt down and said, "Thank you, Great Immortal, for your teachings. Without Great Immortal, I'm afraid it would have taken me tens of thousands of years to take this step." At this moment, Danglong was even more respectful and submissive toward Luo Fan than before. This was because after achieving the body of the Earth, he could finally barely sense Luo Fan's power, which was as vast as the world. He could sense Luo Fan's cultivation, which was like the void of the universe. He finally knew how big the gap between him and Luo Fan was. Luo Fan smiled. "Fellow cultivator, there's no need to be like this. I only slightly changed my physique. To be able to take this step is all thanks to fellow cultivator's hard work. I will remember Great Immortal's kindness." Danglong was stubborn and ignored Luo Fan. He only thanked Luo Fan. Luo Fan tried to persuade him a few times, but Danglong didn't listen. In the end, he could only let him be. After helping him up, he asked, "What plans do you have for the future?" "Naturally, I will follow Great Immortal to deal with the calamity," Danglong said matter-of-factly. "Oh, fellow Taoist actually knows about the Great Tribulation of the world?" Luo Fan was slightly surprised and asked, "I don't. I only heard Great Immortal say that there will be a calamity in a few thousand years. That's why I said it." Danglong smiled honestly. Hearing this, Luo Fan shook his head and said, "Since you don't know, then let me explain it to you. Tian, you should also listen. This calamity is very important, but you can't stay out of it. You need to understand this calamity clearly before you can deal with it." Lin Tian Nan was still immersed in the power of the calamity. When he heard Luo Fan's words, his body shook and he turned around. After turning around, he realized that he had been a daze for a long time. He couldn't help but feel ashamed. He stole a glance at Luo Fan. Seeing that Luo Fan didn't seem to notice and didn't seem to care, he let out a sigh of relief and said, "Disciple will definitely remember." Luo Fan nodded and asked Deng Long, "This isn't a good place to talk. Why don't you follow me to the island?" Deng Long naturally nodded in agreement. Seeing that Deng Long had agreed, Luo Fan didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and pointed. The nebula that had just entered his universe within sleeve rushed out again. After letting out a dragon's roar, it lifted the three of them up. With a shake and a turn, they arrived at the lake that was covered by the formation. They landed directly in front of the mansion that Lin Tiannan had built for Luo Fan. Although this mansion didn't have any decorations, it didn't seem simple at all. Instead, it looked simple and unadorned. It emitted a natural and elegant aura, as if it was in harmony with the mysteries of heaven and earth. When they arrived at the mansion, Lin Tiannan hurriedly introduced them and led Luo Fan and Deng Long into the mansion. This cave abode was very similar to the Seeker Cave. However, it wasn't as mysterious as the Seeking Cave. It was actually created by Lin Tiannan based on the Seeking Cave that Deng Long had seen before. Seeing this mansion, Luo Fan smiled slightly. Although he didn't care about this kind of mansion, he was still grateful for Lin Tiannan's filial piety. After the three of them sat down, Luo Fan said, "A few yuan hui ago, Pangu split the heavens and earth. Then, because he used up too much energy, his body turned into countless things in the ancient world. From then on, there was time in this vast ancient world." Deng Long and Lin Tiannan pricked up their ears and listened attentively to Luo Fan's words. They had naturally heard of the mysteries of the creation of this world before, but none of them understood it as clearly as Luo Fan. At this moment, when they heard Luo Fan's words, they naturally listened attentively. Seeing that the two of them were listening attentively, Luo Fan didn't keep them in suspense and went straight to the point. He said, "However, when Pangu split the heavens and earth, the aftermath of his power also created billions of small worlds in the primal chaos. These small worlds are between a medium-class world and a boundless world. They are unstable worlds. Although there are billions of them, they all exist by relying on the ancient world. They are the vassals of the ancient world. Because these small worlds are extremely unstable, the flow of time is also unstable. The flow of time in most worlds is billions of times faster than in the ancient world. Even now, the ancient world is still considered to have just been created, but many of these small worlds are reaching the end of their lifespans. There are also living beings in the billions of worlds. These living beings also know how to seek the Tao. In these billions of years, they have developed powerful abilities. One of these worlds is called free transformation. There are billions of free heavenly demons living in it. These free heavenly demons have a mysterious nature. They are born with the ability to travel between worlds and devour cultivators' cultivation. Their abilities are the strongest in the billions of worlds. There was another world called the Supreme Heart Transference Heaven, and there were trillions of Supreme Heart Devils living in it. Although these Supreme Heart Devils didn't have the innate ability to change worlds and devour cultivators, they directly targeted the hearts of living beings. They were formless and immaterial, and could possess and control cultivators. Although the power of that world is not as great as free transformation heaven, the difference is limited. Could it be that the calamity of this world is related to these two worlds? Deng Long asked. Exactly. Under the guidance of the heavenly secrets, the living beings of the free incarnation and the Supreme Heart revolving heaven discovered the location of the untainted land. Among them, the great freedom devil master of the free incarnation was hidden in the untainted land. After thousands of years, he would open the passage between the free incarnation and the untainted land, leading billions of free incarnation devils into the untainted land. He wanted to change the nature of the untainted land, turn it into another free incarnation, and then occupy it. There are also living beings hidden in the Supreme Heart Transference Heaven. They can get involved at any time. Luo Fan said lightly. Hearing this, Lin Tiannan's expression changed slightly. Donglong's expression did not change much. What kind of calamity is this? With the power of the great immortal, even billions of free heavenly demons could be destroyed by me. It shouldn't be a calamity, Donglong said unconcernedly. Hearing this, Luo Fan smiled bitterly and said, "You don't know. If the free heavenly demons appear together, I can easily destroy them all. However, the free heavenly demons appear separately and are even more proficient in concealing themselves. Even if my methods are 100 times stronger, I can still destroy half of them. As for the remaining half, I'm afraid it could be scattered all over the primordial world and gradually change the primordial world into another Avalokitesvara." So it's like that. If that's the case, there should be another cultivator of the same level as the Great Immortal. Only by working together with the Great Immortal can we destroy all the free heavenly demons. Donglong was shocked and said, "There is no one in the ancient world who has the same level of cultivation as me. Even if there is, it will be difficult to destroy all the free heavenly demons. After all, the free heavenly demons are not dead. They can hide and escape." Luo Fan sighed. "This is troublesome. It really is a calamity of the world. May I ask the Great Immortal, what about the living beings of the Supreme Heart Transference Heaven?" Donglong could not help but claw his newly grown hair, as if he was having a headache. Although the living beings of the Supreme Heart Transference Heaven are quite threatening, it will only happen after the invasion of the free heavenly demons. If we can solve the threat of the free heavenly demons, then the threat of the Supreme Heart Transference Heaven will be nothing. If we can't solve it, then everything will be meaningless. Luo Fan smiled. "I see. I understand. If the Great Immortal has any orders, just say it. Donglong will not refuse." Donglong bowed and said, Chapter 335, 3 Years of Martial Arts, Superformation Chapter 375, Martial Arts Discussion. Hearing Luo Fan's words, you replied readily, "Fellow, please instruct me. No matter what it is, as long as it is beneficial to the future of chaos, you will not hesitate." Luo Fan smiled. "This matter is a bit troublesome. I need to use the earth body that you have cultivated, and I need you to stay underground for another 800 years. Are you willing to spend 800 years on this matter? For the future of chaos, you is naturally duty-bound. It's only 800 years, compared to what I have experienced in the past. What is it?" You laughed, seeming to not care. Hearing this, Luo Fan smiled. "That's good. There's no need to leave now. Fellow can go stabilize your realm. 3 years later, we will go to the place where we need to borrow your help. So there's still 3 years to cultivate. Just nice. After the great deity modified the earth body cultivation technique, there are still 81 abilities that I have yet to cultivate. I can use this opportunity to cultivate." Yu was overjoyed. Lin Tian-nan, who had been listening obediently, hurriedly said, "Master, disciple is more familiar with this place. Let me bring Senior Yu to the mansion to cultivate." No need. I can go to the place where I used to cultivate. There's no need to trouble yourself. Since that's the case, you will take his leave. We will meet again in 3 years, huh?" He laughed and said. As he spoke, he bowed to Luo Fan. Luo Fan bowed slightly in return. Yu's earth body shook slightly and quickly transformed from inside to outside. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a yellow, jade-like light and lightly drilled into the ground. The floor of the cave that had been refined by Lin Tian-nan's true energy could not block the light at all. The light directly passed through the floor and into the ground. The speed of this light traveling underground was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already brought you back to his old nest when he was still a giant. After cultivating the body of the earth, his body contained all kinds of innate abilities, and he even had some kind of mysterious connection with the earth. Earth escape was only one of the most basic abilities. Huey's nest was able to accommodate his body with a radius of 10,000 miles, so it was naturally quite large. However, he didn't feel suffocated when he entered it. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate his chi to cultivate the 81 spells from the earth cultivation method. When Luo Fan saw that Ho had already disappeared after finishing his sentence, he could not help but shake his head. However, he did not say anything. Instead, he turned to Lin Tian Nan and asked, Tian Nan, do you have any questions? Although his question was a bit random, the depth of Luo Fan's cultivation had already reached an inconceivable level. His words naturally carried an incomparably clear intent. Not to mention Lin Tian Nan, who was in the first level of the heaven realm. Even a normal person would probably know what Luo Fan was referring to. From the intent carried in those words, Lin Tian Nan knew that what Luo Fan was asking was whether Lin Tian Nan had any questions about the great calamity of the ancient wasteland that would occur thousands of years later, but nothing else. So he bowed and said, I do have some doubts in my heart and was just about to ask Master. Oh, feel free to speak. Luo Fan smiled. Is the heart demon and sky demon of the unparalleled heart transference sky and Mahesvara transformation the same as the heart demon and sky demon that Senior Ho encountered when he was going through the great calamity? Lin Tian Nan asked. Yes. Luo Fan's gaze towards Lin Tian Nan was filled with admiration, but also with a trace of surprise. He did not think that Lin Tian Nan's observation was so sharp that he could detect the existence of the sky demon and the heart demon when Ho was going through the great calamity. After all, the attacks of the heart demon and the sky demon were mixed within all sorts of explosive attacks. It was extremely difficult to detect them. If one did not have especially sharp observation skills, they would not be able to detect the existence of the heart demon and the sky demon. Although the heart demon and the sky demon are creatures of the outer world, they were also born under the guidance of the heavenly mystery. They have a mysterious connection with the billions of worlds in the heavens. Furthermore, they are related to the unparalleled path of the great calamity of the ancient wasteland. In the ancient wasteland, the heavenly calamity of all the cultivators in the billions of worlds in the heavens will cause the unparalleled path to produce a strange power that penetrates the heaven and earth, drawing the heart demon and the sky demon over. It is precisely because of this that the great calamity of the ancient wasteland is so troublesome. Luo Fan continued. I see. Lin Tian Nan came to a sudden realization. His eyes were filled with shock, but he did not show any signs of worry. His confidence in Luo Fan was close to blind. To him, no matter what kind of calamity it was, as long as his master Luo Fan was present, he would definitely be able to get through it. When Luo Fan saw Lin Tian Nan's expression, he smiled slightly and did not dwell on this matter any further. He said, I have been waiting for fellow Luo to cultivate for 3 years, but I happen to have some free time. If you have any questions regarding your cultivation, feel free to ask me. I will answer them for you one by one. Thank you, Master. Lin Tian Nan could not help but be overjoyed when he heard this. Luo Fan smiled slightly and waved his hand. The air changed, and in the blink of an eye, a cloud-like object appeared under Lin Tian Nan's body and lifted him up. The cloud was formed from pure origin energy, and it gave off a faint white light. When it appeared, there seemed to be a faint, almost indiscernible sound of Tao lingering in the cave. There were also strands of strange light and fragrance filling the cave. Lin Tian Nan understood Luo Fan's intentions. He sat down cross-legged and instantly felt his mind become clear. His emotions were incomparably calm, and even his thoughts seemed to become much smoother. This cloud was something that Luo Fan had created from the ancient wasteland space by using the principle of condensing auspicious clouds as a means of transportation and the power of his own Tai fruit of way. It naturally contained some kind of inconceivable mystery and possessed all kinds of magical powers. To Lin Tian Nan, the other kinds of magical powers were all illusions. Only one of the magical powers that stabilized one's state of mind had a great effect. If he sat cross-legged on this cloud and cultivated, his cultivation efficiency would be at least several times higher than usual. After sitting down, the flashes of light in Lin Tian Nan's mind seemed to flicker even faster. The various problems that he couldn't understand before became incomparably clear and incomparably clear. Just by sitting down, he realized that there were many problems that he didn't need to ask Luo Fan for guidance anymore. At this time, Lin Tian Nin naturally knew that this cloud was extremely magical. He couldn't help but feel even more grateful towards Luo Fan. He bowed to Luo Fan and began to ask all kinds of difficult questions that he had encountered in his tens of thousands of years of cultivation. Lin Tian Nan's cultivation had already reached the first level of the heaven realm. No matter if it was any creature that had ascended from this small world, he would be considered a great master of martial arts. It would be a waste to start sect. However, when compared to Luo Fan, he was nothing. Luo Fan's casual pointers were able to greatly broaden Lin Tian Nan's horizons and greatly improve his cultivation. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, just as Luo Fan was explaining to Lin Tian Nan how to absorb the chaotic vitality into his body, Lin Tian Nan's entire body suddenly shook. Then, an endless amount of chaotic vitality gathered from all directions. In the blink of an eye, it entered Lin Tian Nan's body through all the acupuncture points in his body. Although there was only a small source of chaotic energy below the island, and it had almost been sucked dry by the Hui, compared to Lin Tian Nan's cultivation realm, this small amount of chaotic energy was more than enough for him to cultivate. Therefore, when Luo Fan saw this, he only lightly smiled. He didn't help Lin Tian Nan gather the chaotic vitality. He only calmly watched Lin Tian Nan's transformation. How shocking was his eyesight! When Lin Tian Nan's transformation appeared, he instantly realized that Lin Tian Nan had broken through the bottleneck of the first level of the Sky Realm after his 3 years of lectures. At this moment, Lin Tian Nan's body and power were both transforming. The chaotic vitality that gathered from all directions became more and more. In the end, it actually condensed into strands of grayish substance that were like tiny spider threads. They directly drilled into Lin Tian Nan's body. Through some mysterious transformation, they were refined by Lin Tian Nan and merged into the energy in his body. They became the energy that propelled the energy in his body and the transformation of his body. This was the chaotic vitality that Lin Tian Nan had painstakingly accumulated. He could only absorb such a large amount when he was breaking through. Although it couldn't compare to one breath of Luo Fan, it was already comparable to all of the energy in Lin Tian Nan's body. After the strands of chaotic vitality entered his body, his energy instantly underwent a mysterious and indescribable transformation. It was as if some mysterious and indescribable theory had been merged into it. As it circulated, it resonated with some kind of supreme existence in the ancient world. It was as if it could produce an apocalyptic power at any time. This process continued for 6 hours. After 6 hours, a cracking sound that sounded like the opening of heaven and earth, and also like some kind of extremely sturdy barrier suddenly breaking, came from Lin Tian Nan's body. Following this sound, Lin Tian Nan's body suddenly became blurry, and then from blurry to real. This continued for 9 times before it stabilized. When his body stabilized, the aura that his body emitted was already more than 10 times stronger than before. When he opened his eyes, it was as if there were countless figures in his eyes that were performing hundreds of millions of martial arts. After a while, it disappeared and his eyes returned to their incomparably deep and pitch-black state. After his eyes stabilized, Lin Tian Nan hurriedly got off the cloud and bowed to Luo Fan. He said, "Thank you, Master, for your help. Disciple did not disappoint you and finally reached the second level of the heaven realm. Not bad. Get up," Luo Fan said with a faint smile. As he spoke, he raised his hand and lightly waved. Lin Tian Nan's body slowly floated up and returned to the cloud. In reality, Lin Tian Nan's improvement did not surprise Luo Fan at all. After all, in these 3 years, Luo Fan had slowly passed on the various martial arts principles that he had comprehended to Lin Tian Nan, bit by bit, with every action and with every word and sentence he had said. If Lin Tian Nan still could not break through, Luo Fan would probably suspect that he had accepted the wrong disciple. Since you have broken through, what you need to do now is to consolidate your cultivation and not to absorb more principles. Let's stop here for today's lecture. From what I can see, fellow Taoist Ji should be arriving soon. Luo Fan smiled. Luo Fan did not mention the seed of fear in Lin Tiannan's heart. His sun and moon true pupils could see through the past and the future. Just now, when Lin Tiannan broke through, countless figures flashed in front of him. Through these figures, he already knew that Lin Tiannan had his own opportunities. The seed of fear in his heart would also be resolved by his opportunities. But there was no need to worry. Even though Lin Tiannan was reluctant, he understood that what Luo Fan said was not something he could refute. He could only bow and say, "Thank you, Master, for teaching me martial arts." Luo Fan nodded and said, "There's still a few thousand years before the great calamity of the primordial world arrives. The 1 billion beings that have ascended from the minor chiliocosm will probably be in great danger. We must make a good plan in order to allow them to successfully pass through this great calamity. Master, please be merciful and find a way to survive for these 1 billion beings." Hearing this, Lin Tiannan hurriedly climbed down from the cloud and knelt on the ground. It is not difficult to find a way to survive for these 1 billion beings. However, the Chaos Era is the fate of all beings in the Chaos Era. If you have not ascended, then this Chaos Era has nothing to do with you, and you can just avoid it. But you have already ascended and become one with the Chaos Era. Under the guidance of the heavens, this Chaos Era is not something you can avoid. Luo Fan said calmly, "What should we do? Even though these 1 billion beings are many, the strongest are the disciples. With this kind of strength, how can we achieve anything in this Chaos Era? If we can't avoid it, won't we just wait for death?" Lin Tiannan was shocked. Hearing Lin Tiannan's discouraging words, Luo Fan frowned and glanced at Lin Tiannan. Seeing Luo Fan's expression, Lin Tiannan knew that he had made a mistake and hurriedly admitted his mistake. Luo Fan knew that Lin Tiannan was confused out of concern, but he did not blame him. He only said, "This may seem difficult, but in reality, it is not difficult. Wait for me and you to form a formation and let these 1 billion beings have a good rehearsal. Even though this formation will not allow you to achieve victory in this Chaos Era, it should not be a problem for you to protect yourself, as long as there are no mistakes." "Thank you, Master." Hearing this, Lin Tiannan was overjoyed. It seems like the effect of this fear seed is quite large. Luo Fan saw Lin Tiannan's reaction of being unable to control his emotions, and such a thought flashed through his mind. Even though he could see it, he did not say anything. If he pointed out this seed of fear, it would be even more troublesome for Lin Tiannan to get rid of it in the future. It was better to let nature take its course and wait for an opportunity in the future. After this thought flashed through, countless thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. The Tao Fruits Way scripture appeared in his mind. The Book of Array Tao began to circulate and change in his mind. Not long after, the Tao Fruits Way scripture settled down. The only thing that remained in his mind was an extremely complicated formation diagram with 1 billion nodes. The formation engraved on this formation was extremely mysterious. Overall, it seemed to contain some kind of heaven and earth principle and the supreme Tao. It seemed to be connected to the supreme Tao of the great desolate world. However, apart from the eye of the formation, there were only a few simple changes. It was not difficult to practice the 1 billion nodes individually. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. A spiritual light rushed out from his hand, crossed the distance, and entered the Niwen between Lin Tiannan's eyebrows. They rushed straight into his spiritual sea and exploded in his spiritual sea, which was 100,000 feet in circumference. They turned into hundreds of billions of characters and a formation that looked like stars in the sky, filling his spiritual sea to the brim. Lin Tiannan cultivated the martial way. Although it was different from the techniques that Luo Fan taught his other disciples, It was still integrated into the Tao Fruit's way by Luo Fan. His soul also appeared in his sea of knowledge. Although the focus of his martial way was different, his soul was not as flexible as his fellow disciples. It was still of high quality. It was not something that could be easily broken. However, when the endless information flowed in, Lin Tian Nan's originally strong and condensed soul could not withstand the impact of the information. His soul shook violently and distorted, almost disappearing. Fortunately, Luo Fan had a sense of propriety. Although it was very difficult for him to withstand, after a while, he finally managed to stabilize himself in the sea of information. A formation with 1 billion nodes. Even if each node was described with one word, it would still require over 1 billion words. Furthermore, each node clearly had specific changes, but it was not something that could be described with one word. At least hundreds of words would be needed to describe it. Coupled with the complete formation diagram, one could imagine how much information there was. After Luo Fan released the light, he saw that Lin Tian Nan's eyes became blank. Countless words and diagrams flowed through his pupils. Even if I finish looking at it, it will still take a few months. If I want to practice it, it will probably take a few thousand years. This was the only thought in Luo Fan's mind. He raised his hand and waved. The cloud that was holding Lin Tian Nan trembled slightly and expanded several times. It wrapped around Lin Tian Nan, and in the blink of an eye, it had already entered another room. When the cloud wrapped around Lin Tian Nan and disappeared, a yellow light that looked like a yellow gem slowly emerged from the ground. After a while, a figure gradually appeared in front of Luo Fan. It was the figure of the tortoise-shaped, innate god Qi. As Luo Fan sent Lin Tian Nan away to allow him to slowly comprehend the array, it just so happened that the 3-year period was up. At this time, Lin Tian Nan had already mastered all of the techniques from the Great Earth Body Cultivation technique. Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon shined and clearly saw Qi's progress. At this time, the Great Earth Yuan Qi in Qi's body was pure and condensed. When it moved, it seemed to resonate with an unfathomable and mysterious existence under the ground. It was as if it could obtain some mysterious power from the outside world to replenish itself. Moreover, when the power flowed, there was a mysterious and smooth aura. It was a feeling of ease and ease. It was clear that Qi's control over the power within his body had reached the point of perfection. Congratulations on mastering your technique. Luo Fan smiled and put away the true eyes of sun and moon. Chapter 336. The ancestral veins of the world after the tortoise-shaped innate god had mastered the 81 divine abilities in the earth cultivation technique. He could already fully unleash the power that a rogue immortal should have. Compared to 3 years ago, when he had just passed the heavenly tribulation, he was more than 1,000 times stronger. To be able to make such huge progress in such a short period of time, how could this innate god, who had been living underground for several yuan Hui, not be proud? When Luo Fan heard you say this, he faintly smiled. After declining for a while, he said to him, "Since fellow has already mastered the 81 spells, we don't need to delay any longer. Let's head to that location together. Great Immortal, please lead the way." You laughed and said without a care. Lin Tian Nan still needed a few months to finish looking at the formation with 1 billion nodes and another few years to understand it. This was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. Luo Fan had already been delayed here for 3 years. Now that Lin Tian Nan had finished his task, it wouldn't be good for him to continue staying here. Naturally, he planned to go with Qi Zi to do the thing that only Qi could do. Since the Qi had been unified, Luo Fan would naturally not hesitate. With a thought, the void changed on its own. A cloud the size of an acre naturally appeared beneath his feet. It was constantly changing, twisting, and spiraling, as if it was displaying some sort of great Tao's profundities. There were even auspicious clouds that constantly emitted the sound of the great Tao. After this cloud appeared, it directly floated up from the ground and lifted Luo Fan and Qi up at the same time. With a slight tremble, They left the Seeker's cave mansion and arrived outside the cave mansion in the blink of an eye. With another shake, they were thousands of miles high in the sky, out of the range of the formation that enveloped the lake. As soon as the cloud appeared, a look of shock and shame appeared on the turtle in Nate God's face. Naturally, he was shocked by the power that Luo Fan revealed during the process of this magic cloud's creation. However, he was ashamed that his own power was almost at the level of an ant when compared to Luo Fan. His previous complacency seemed so shallow and laughable at this moment. Luo Fan naturally knew the changes in Ho's mind, but he didn't care about it. This auspicious cloud seemed to be drifting slowly, but it was actually very fast. It was heading southeast at an unimaginable speed. The thing that Luo Fan wanted Ho to do was extremely important. Although it was not to the extent that it would decide the outcome of the great tribulation of heaven and earth in a few thousand years, it still had a great impact on the outcome. It could be said that it was closely related to the outcome of the battle. After condensing the sun-moon true eyes, Luo Fan's perception of the mysteries of heaven revealed by the supreme, great Tao became increasingly clear. When he saw Hui this time, he knew that there was one thing that only Hui could do, and it was extremely important. Afterwards, following this strange feeling, he deduced slightly and found a simple clue about that matter. He even roughly understood how long it would take for Hui to do it. It was precisely because of this that the conversation from 3 years ago had occurred, and also the appearance of the scene today. Although he still did not know where exactly that place was and what exactly Hui wanted to do, he was extremely confident that this matter was definitely like this. He would not be wrong. Standing on the auspicious cloud, Luo Fan's mind was calm and traceless. It was like an ancient well, without the slightest fluctuation. It was like a clear mirror that reflected everything in the primordial world. Just as he was in this state, a faintly discernible pulling force came from an unfathomable and mysterious place, pulling Luo Fan into the distance. Luo Fan deduced slightly and knew that that was where Hui needed to go. It was also where Hui needed to stay for the next 800 years. Without any hesitation, he flew in the direction of the pulling force. Although the speed of this cloud had reached a certain limit, the position where the traction force came from was too far away. By the time the auspicious cloud brought Luo Fan and Hui to the place where the pulling force was, 3 months had already passed. In these 3 months, the distance that Luo Fan had traveled with C had reached a distance of 800 billion miles. Even in the vast and boundless primordial world, such a huge number was a rather long journey. Luo Fan had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. He often went into seclusion and napped for thousands or tens of thousands of years. 3 months was not much pressure to him. This was even more so for Hui. Apart from meeting Luo Fan this time, he had basically lived alone in the boundless darkness underground. The boring process of traveling for 3 months did not give him any pressure at all. Moreover, he was currently on the auspicious cloud that Luo Fan had condensed. Listening to the sound of the great Tao and watching the mysterious great Tao that appeared as the auspicious cloud rolled, he could almost feel his cultivation realm improving at all times. It was impossible for him to feel bored. Therefore, although he had been traveling for 3 months, during this process, Luo Fan and Hui did not exchange a single word. On this day, the cloud stopped 10,000 miles above the Buzhou Mountain, 8 billion miles away from the Buzhou Mountain. Looking down, he saw that this place was covered in mountains. There was a mountain range that was more than 3 billion kilometers wide. This mountain range covered a vast area. There were hundreds of thousands of mountains that were distributed according to some kind of supreme principle. The highest mountain in the entire mountain range was 1,000,000 feet tall. It was located near the northwest of the mountain range. The shortest mountain was also 100,000 feet tall. It was near the southeast of the mountain range. The hundreds of thousands of mountains were placed below. Naturally, there was a mysterious and indescribable aura that kept seeping out. Even at a height of 5,000 kilometers, he could sense the indescribable aura that filled the void. Looking up, the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer above 45,000 kilometers seemed to have changed slightly under this aura. At the very least, with Luo Fan's sun and moon eyes that could see through the past and the future, he could see that there were more than 100 times more astral wind, lightning, and fire living beings in the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer than in other places. In fact, the intelligence of these astral wind, lightning, and fire living beings was much higher than that of the astral wind, lightning, and fire living beings in other places. So that's how it is. I understand. Luo Fan sensed this aura and instantly knew what this mountain range was. He also understood why Hui had come here and why this matter could affect the outcome of the primordial world's great tribulation thousands of years later. This mountain range was located in an extremely strange place in the primordial world. This location was not the center, nor was it the edge. Instead, it was like the heart of a human body. It seemed ordinary, but it was in line with a certain primordial great Tao. The structure of this mountain range was also extremely mysterious. The hundreds of thousands of mountains seemed to be randomly scattered across the land, but in fact, they naturally formed a strange formation. At first glance, this formation did not seem to be anything special. In fact, it did not even display the might of a formation. However, upon closer inspection, one would be able to tell just how profound this formation was. The entire formation actually faintly resonated with the entire primordial world. It seemed that any change in the primordial world would cause the formation to change, and any change in the formation would also cause the primordial world to undergo a similar change. This, perhaps, is the legendary primordial ancestral vein. This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. With a thought, the magical cloud sank, and in the blink of an eye, it had already landed on the mountain that was 1,000,000 meters tall. Even though this place was within the vast primordial world, it was still in the depths of the primordial world. Logically speaking, the chaotic yuan qi here should be exceptionally thin. However, the chaotic yuan qi here was extremely rich. Although it did not condense into a physical existence, it had turned into some kind of viscous, gaseous existence, as if it could be compressed into a liquid state at will. From this, one could tell that this location was indeed mysterious. It was not an ordinary mountain range. After dispersing the magical cloud, Luo Fan and Yu Qi stood at the top of the mountain. Taking a deep breath, a thick stream of chaotic yuan qi surged into Luo Fan's body through various parts of his body. It was slightly shaken by his Tai Dao fruit and turned into the purest energy, which was integrated into the Tai Dao fruit. A feeling that was quite different from the one he had absorbed from Buzhou Mountain flowed through his mind. It was a rather mysterious feeling, as if his spirit had undergone a subtle, undetectable, and mysterious transformation after absorbing the chaotic yuan qi. Luo Fan had a very precise grasp of his spirit, so he instantly noticed this change. He knew that this feeling was caused by the slight increase in the connection between his spirit and the untainted land. Cultivating here may not be of much use to me, but for you, it's even better than Buzhou Mountain. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. At this time, you also noticed the change in this location, and a look of wild joy appeared on his face. This place seems to have an extremely important connection with my earth body cultivation technique. When I came here, the circulation of my qi is actually much smoother than when I was in other places. Just by taking a breath, I can feel the progress of my cultivation. This is really incredible. You murmured. He greedily opened his nostrils and inhaled the rich, chaotic yuan qi into his body, turning it into pure and condensed energy, which completely integrated into the topaz-like earth yuan qi in his body. After absorbing this pure and condensed energy, the earth yuan qi seemed to have undergone a slight change. The earthy yellow color became more translucent, and the topaz-like feeling became more intense. After a long while, you finally stopped the process of greedily absorbing the chaotic energy. He let out a satisfied burp and shouted, "Awesome!" Seeing you like this, Luo Fan showed a faint smile. He did not stop you. and quietly waited for you to calm down. After a long while, you finally calmed down completely. Turning around, he bowed to Luo Fan and said, "Thank you, great immortal, for letting me come here. If I can stay here for 800 years, my cultivation will definitely make a breakthrough. This is a rare opportunity, fellow Taoist. The time for fellow Taoists to do it is here," Luo Fan said with a slight smile. "Then I can rest assured." You was overjoyed and asked, "But I don't know what is so mysterious about this place, and why it is so mysterious. Also, what does Great Immortal want me to do?" Luo Fan smiled. "This location is the untainted land's ancestral vein, and naturally formed an untainted ancient formation. Under the guidance of the Great Tao, it reflects the untainted land. Although the earth Yuan Chi here is not very dense, it is the essence of the untainted land. It contains unimaginable power." "I see. I didn't expect there to be such a strange thing in the world." You couldn't help but exclaim, "This location is too important. If it is occupied by the extraterrestrial demons in the future, it will cause irreparable damage to the untainted land. Therefore, there needs to be an innate deity who cultivates the power of the earth. I see that you cultivate the earth body cultivation technique, and you're the best at cultivating the power of the earth." Luo Fan lightly smiled and said, "But in this way, I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Ku. This place has an area of more than 3 billion kilometers, and there are 499,999 mountain peaks. The area is vast, and the terrain is complex. If fellow Taoist Ku were to stand guard here, you'd have to spend a huge amount of effort at all times, and I'm afraid it would affect your cultivation. Because there is no one who can take on this responsibility, I will need you to stay here for 800 years. After 800 years, I will find a replacement for you. What do you think of this arrangement? Being in charge of this place is something that I can't wish for. It doesn't matter even if I have to expend a huge amount of effort at all times. That way, it can instead temper my cultivation. Although it will slightly affect my speed, it can solidify my foundation, and the benefits are great. It doesn't matter if I stay here forever, but there is no need for Great Immortal to find a replacement." You laughed and said, "This matter is settled for the time being. I will look for a replacement first. As for the matter after 800 years, let's see if you can hold on." Luo Fan smiled slightly. After knowing the uniqueness of this location, his super strong calculation ability was completely unleashed. In an instant, he clearly calculated the cause and effect. There was no doubt in his heart about this matter, so he arranged it like this. You knew that when Luo Fan said this, he had already made his decision, so he didn't insist. However, his mind was quite firm, and he didn't think that he would ask for someone to replace him after 800 years. Since the matter was clear, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed to the void. In the sky, the aura given off by the mountain range, which was more than 3 billion miles wide, turned from invisible to tangible, turning into a mist that flashed with a faint earthy yellow light. It rose from the ground and rose straight into the sky, like a huge pillar of heaven with a diameter of more than 3 billion miles, piercing straight into the layer of gale, thunder, and fire 90,000 miles above the ground. Although you could sense that this mountain range was different, and from Luo Fan's explanation, he also knew that this mountain range was the desolate ancestral vein. However, he still didn't think that this mountain range would be so mysterious that it could emit such a mysterious aura. He had already cultivated the body of the earth, and his body naturally had a very mysterious connection with the earth. He was born with the ability to sense all unusual things related to the earth. At this moment, when the aura materialized into a yellow mist, he knew that it was an aura that contained infinite spiritual opportunity of the earth. It had the ability to develop intelligence and evolve vitality. It was because of this that the aura enveloped the area of the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer would have such a strange scene. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed again. The mist that materialized from the aura that was like a huge pillar of heaven in the void changed again. Some places deepened, and some places faded. In the blink of an eye, An extremely complicated and mysterious pattern was drawn in the void. This pattern completely enveloped an area with a radius of more than 3 billion miles. It was so vast that even Luo Fan felt his tongue burn. However, in this vast area, almost every inch of the void was filled with countless lines. These countless lines combined to form an extremely complex and profound formation diagram. This pattern that occupied such a wide area was tens of thousands of times more complicated than the one that Luo Fan taught Lin Tian. If Lin Tian were to look at this array made up of countless lines, he would probably faint from being unable to withstand the huge amount of information. If Luo Fan dared to put this pattern into Lin Tian's sea of consciousness, Lin Tian's sea of consciousness would instantly collapse, and even his soul would be destroyed. Even though Luo Fan had attained the Tai Dao fruit, and his cultivation had reached the level of the most powerful person in the untainted land, when he saw this pattern, his eyes could not help but blur. His sea of consciousness even felt a little swollen, as if it could not bear the information that surged in through his sun and moon eyes in an instant. The mysteries of the world are indeed more mysterious than any magical power or cultivation method. Luo Fan secretly sighed with emotion after he slightly stabilized his mind. Compared to Luo Fan, who was only slightly stunned before regaining his senses, you did not have such good luck. Huey's cultivation level was naturally tens of thousands of times higher than Lin Tian's. But compared to this complicated and mysterious pattern, his cultivation level was still too weak. Although he had the body of the earth, which allowed him to receive the protection of the earth and prevent the sea of consciousness from collapsing due to the endless information surging in, he still felt dizzy and dizzy. Even his thoughts were a little slow. After all, Luo Fan's cultivation level was high. Although his sun and moon eyes could not instantly absorb all the mysteries contained in this extremely complicated and mysterious pattern into his mind, he could still feel it. However, with just a glance, he had already found the core of this complicated formation and roughly understood the principle behind the operation of this formation. With a thought, the scene that was limited by the aura once again disappeared into the void, turning into an invisible aura and disappearing without a trace. The sky and earth once again returned to normal. Fellow cultivator, wake up. Seeing that Hui still showed no signs of waking up, Luo Fan softly called out. Chapter 337. After Yu's soul was awakened by the huge change caused by the sound of awakening, the sound of awakening suddenly stopped without any warning. His sea of consciousness also instantly became calm, as if nothing had happened before. Yu came back to his senses and opened his eyes. He blinked and looked around. Only then did he realize what had happened, and he could not help but smile bitterly. I didn't think I would lose consciousness because of this one day. Thank you, great immortal. Yu sighed. Fellow Taoist, there is no need to be discouraged. This formation contains the mysteries of the primordial world. It is extremely complicated, and even I almost lost consciousness. Fellow Taoist reaction is understandable. What's more, fellow Taoist has a lot of time in the next 800 years to comprehend this natural formation. There's no need to completely comprehend it now. You can take your time. Luo Fan turned and smiled at you. Great immortal's words make sense. I was too greedy. Ho also smiled. The aura that Luo Fan had stimulated and evolved just now was the aura naturally emitted by the prehistoric ancient formation. Naturally, it had an extremely subtle and profound connection with the entire prehistoric ancient formation. This kind of reverence and profound connection was usually not released and was not something that ordinary people could see. What Luo Fan had done just now was to make this kind of connection appear. He made it into something that ordinary people could easily see. Therefore, the huge pattern that covered an area of more than 3 billion miles in the sky was, in fact, the diagram of the primordial ancient formation. Just now, although Luo Fan was unable to comprehend all the mysteries of the formation, he had already roughly observed the formation diagram. Through this rough observation, he was able to recognize the location of the formation core of the formation diagram. Thus, he said to you, "Fellow Taoist, if you want to guard this formation, you must go to the formation's eye. Let me guide you there." "Thank you, great immortal." He was naturally willing and said happily. Luo Fan slightly smiled, raised his left hand, and spread out his big sleeve. From his left sleeve, a 10,000 feet long divine dragon rushed out. It was Luo Fan's mount, Nebula, which had been reforged. This nebula was wrapped in auspicious clouds, and there were even bursts of light coming from its body. Sounds of the great Tao surrounded its body, and the entire divine dragon was like a legendary immortal god. After Nebula appeared, he faced the sky and let out a dragon roar. The strange aura around him that was produced by the ancient chaos formation rippled slightly, as if countless subtle and unpredictable yuan force was gathering from all directions, causing Nebula's body to stretch even straighter. There seemed to be traces of joy in his eyes. Luo Fan had a thought. Nebula moved its body and sent its head over. Through a very strange method, it dragged Luo Fan and you on its head. Then, it turned around again, and its body easily passed through the void as if it was swimming in water. In a short while, it had traveled more than 2 billion kilometers and arrived at a seemingly ordinary mountain, but at this moment, it was connected to the other 499,998 mountains in the formation, as if it was drawing in the power contained in the other 499,998 mountains. It was a 129,600 feet tall mountain. As soon as you arrived at this location, his eyes suddenly lit up and he said happily, "It really is here." Although he was unable to see through the array when Luo Fan activated the Great Desolate Ancient Array, his body was the body of the earth, and he was born with a very subtle connection with the Great Desolate Ancient Array. When he arrived at this place, he felt that his body of the earth seemed to be 100 times more active, and that subtle connection was more than 100 times more obvious. With such a change, how could he not understand that besides being the eye of the entire formation, there is absolutely no other possibility of this location being the eye of the entire formation? Luo Fan thought. The nebula suddenly descended with Luo Fan and Yu. In an instant, it descended from the altitude of 10,000 kilometers and landed on the mountain that was hundreds of thousands of meters tall. Then, with a shake of its body, it rushed back into Luo Fan's universe in the sleeve. After landing on the mountain, Luo Fan's senses, which were many times more powerful than Yu's, clearly grasped the entire formation, or rather, the pulse of the entire ancient chaos formation. He could even vaguely hear an invisible heartbeat being transmitted into his mind. There seemed to be an indistinct voice that didn't seem to exist, but it was extremely clear that it was telling him about some kind of profound earth mysteries. With a slight turn of the true eyes of sun and moon, he had already seen through the surface of this seemingly ordinary mountain. In his eyes, this mountain seemed to be formed from the countless tiny threads. Within the area over 3 billion miles in radius of the Great Formation, every inch of space seemed to be connected with this mountain, flowing ceaselessly under the control of this mountain, pulsating under the pulsation of this mountain. With a slight thought, the true eyes of sun and moon spun again. As a result, endless information was transmitted into his mind through his pupils, then into the world of his sea of consciousness through his mind. Gradually, it was incorporated into his indomitable spirit. As this endless information was absorbed into his spirit soul, a faintly discernible dark yellow color seemed to be added between the golden and silver light in the eyes of his Pangbone. Boom! Crack! Bang! Unimaginably loud noises suddenly echoed in Luo Fan's spiritual world. As he recalled the noises, all kinds of indescribable changes happened in his spiritual world. The earth rose, sank, mountains shifted, rivers opened up, plants grew, and the color of the sky changed. Almost in an instant, the entire topography of the vast and limitless sea of consciousness underwent an earth-shattering change. The sky was still 90,000 miles high, and the earth was still as broad and boundless as before. However, nothing in common could be found on the earth anymore. The entire earth had become incomparably natural and real. There were even countless mysterious and unfathomable existences hidden under the earth, and there were even many existences that Luo Fan himself couldn't grasp. Luo Fan knew that there was even an existence like the yellow spring under the earth. It meandered and flowed and almost covered every inch of the entire sea of consciousness world. Gee, how silently sensed the changes in his spiritual world. A long while later, Luo Fan let out a long breath, showing a faint smile on his face. Prehistorical ancient formation, indeed mysterious and unpredictable. He sighed silently. The change in his sea of consciousness just now was really beyond his expectations. Originally, he only planned to use the fact that this place was the formation eye of the prehistorical ancient formation to comprehend the mysteries of the ancient flood formation, and it would be best if he could completely deduce the operating rules of the formation eye. However, he didn't expect the formation to be so mysterious. Just the strands of mysteries that he had absorbed into his spirit had already affected the stability of his sea of consciousness, naturally changing the structure of his sea of consciousness into one that was compatible with the Great Desolation Ancient Array. The Great Desolation Ancient Formation itself was a mysterious formation that was born from the Great Desolation World. This place was the ancestral vein of the Great Desolation World. Under its transformation, Luo Fan's sea of consciousness had unknowingly conformed to the supreme profundity of the Great Desolation World. The entire structure of the Great Desolation World had unconsciously conformed to the mysterious structure of the Great Desolation World. It was because of this formation that the spiritual world and the spiritual world actually produced many mysterious structures that Luo Fan didn't know. Although I can't completely control the spiritual world, but if I can completely control the spiritual world in the future, I will definitely be able to understand the prehistorical world to another level. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. The changes in his spiritual world just now were almost earth-shattering, and the terrain of the entire spiritual world was changing. However, the spiritual world was almost illusory, and everything was idealistic. The entire transformation process lasted only a few breaths. When Luo Fan opened his eyes again, you had also woken up from the mysterious aura that the mountain emitted. What do you think of this place? Seeing Yu's rather shocked expression, Luo Fan couldn't help but smile slightly. Of course it's great. Even if I don't need to stay here, I'm afraid I would have to ask Great Immortal to bring me here. You only smiled and said, since you think this place is to your liking, then I can rest assured. The formation eye of this formation will constantly move, and after 129,600 years, it will once again return to this mountain. Fellow Taoist, you have to remember this movement pattern, lest you make a mistake, Luo Fan said with a smile. 129,600 years is a cycle, so that's how it is. I understand. Great Immortal, don't worry. With me here, there won't be any mistakes. Yu's eyes revealed a look of understanding. The prehistorical ancient formation was compatible with the entire prehistorical world. As the ancestral vein of the prehistorical world, the formation I naturally couldn't be fixed like the shallow formation. In reality, the formation I would constantly move with the passage of time. At this moment, it was still on this mountain, but after a few days, it would probably move to another location. It could be a high mountain, a valley, or even the void or underground. But no matter what, the possible locations of the formation I must have one thing in common. That was, the possible location of the formation I must be related to the number 129,600. It could be the height, or the weight, or the depth, or the width. This wasn't a rigidity, nor was it a change, but it was because the number itself contained a very mysterious mystery. In other words, this number in the prehistorical world contained some kind of mysterious mystery, and was a special number that matched the evolution of the Supreme Tao. It was because of this that the number was so mysterious. The position of the formation that could bear the power of the prehistorical ancient formation would naturally have such a number added to it by the power of the Tao. Previously, Luo Fan had used the mysterious effect of this formation to understand the circulation pattern of the entire formation eye. Although there were some twists and turns, it only gave him more benefits. His goal of understanding the circulation pattern of the formation eye had already been unknowingly achieved. In his mind, the circulation path of the entire formation eye was as clear as the lines on his palm. That mysterious and unfathomable path that contained some kind of earth mysteries flowed in his mind, outlining an indescribable pattern. This pattern was not a three-dimensional talisman, but it also contained some kind of supreme power. It even contained many of the mysteries of the earth and the truths of the world that Luo Fan had yet to comprehend. If he had obtained this path earlier, Luo Fan had absolute confidence that he could improve Dunglong's earth cultivation technique. It would make Dunglong's earth body even stronger and more compatible with the prehistorical earth. However, it was too late. The earth body cultivation technique of Danglong had already cultivated the body of earth. Its essence was already fixed. Even if he changed the body of earth, he would only be able to add some divine abilities and strength to the body of earth, and it would not improve his essence at all. At this point, he could only sigh at Danglong's lack of opportunities. Hearing Danglong say this, he didn't hesitate anymore. He smiled and said, "Since that's the case, to prevent you from wasting too much time looking for the circulation pattern of the formation eye, I will teach you the circulation pattern of the formation eye." "Thank you, great immortal." Danglong bowed and said happily. If he wanted to understand the circulation pattern of the formation eye, he could. After all, he had the earth body. If he cultivated here, he would naturally be affected by the aura of the formation eye, and in the future, he would be able to understand the circulation of the formation eye. However, that would waste too much time. He only had 800 years, and he still needed to stay here. If he wasted too much time on understanding the pattern of the formation eye, it would be detrimental to his duty. Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed, and an extremely compressed spiritual light rushed out of his hand. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Danglong. Danglong opened his mouth and inhaled. The spiritual light rushed into his mouth and instantly flowed into his Naiwan palace. Then, through a mysterious place, it rushed into his sea of consciousness. After the spiritual light rushed into his sea of consciousness, it instantly exploded and turned into an overwhelming number of words and patterns. There were many words and patterns, and the amount of information they contained was enormous. There were probably tens of billions of words in it, and although there was only one image, it was so vast that it recorded all sorts of special locations within a radius of over 3 billion kilometers. The amount of information contained in it was not something that could be described in just a few 100 million words. It could be said that although the amount of information in this spiritual light was not as much as the one Luo Fan taught Lin Tiannan, it was not too far off. It could be said that it was on the same level. And this was only the circulation pattern of the formation eye of the ancient chaos formation. Compared to the mysteries of the entire ancient chaos formation, the circulation pattern of the formation eye was only a drop in the bucket. It was not even a millionth of the entire formation. From this, one could see how grand the ancient chaos formation was. How profound was it? Dunglong's cultivation was more than 10,000 times stronger than Lin Tiannan's. Although this amount of information filled his entire sea of consciousness and almost caused it to explode, his soul did not become muddled because of this. Instead, it produced an incomparably powerful suction force that madly absorbed the countless words and patterns that filled his sea of consciousness into his soul, transforming them into waves of memories. The speed of absorption was not something that Lin Tiannan could hope to match. Even so, a full 6 hours had passed by the time Lin Tiannan had absorbed all of the words and diagrams into his spirit and transformed them into his own memories. After 6 hours, Danglong finally let out a long breath. His eyes, which had been tightly shut for a long time, slowly opened. His eyes were slightly dazed. There seemed to be countless words and patterns constantly flashing past. After a long while, This strange phenomenon disappeared as Dunlong's eyes became clear. Thank you, great immortal, for your teachings. Without great immortal's teachings, I'm afraid that even 800 years would not have been enough to understand the circulation pattern of the formation eye. Danglong bowed to Luo Fan. Originally, he faintly thought that Luo Fan was making a mountain out of a molehill. He thought that the circulation pattern of the formation eye only required a bit of comprehension and that there was no need for him to teach him. But now, he realized how ignorant he was and how earth-shattering the divine power of this great immortal was. He could not help but feel ashamed, and even more so, he had endless lingering fear. At this moment, his mind was spinning. If great immortal really didn't teach me the secrets of the formation eye, then wouldn't I have to spend these 800 years constantly searching for the formation eye? How would I be able to enjoy the wonderful benefits of cultivating in the formation eye? Hearing Dunlong's words, Luo Fan smiled and said, I only hope that fellow doesn't blame me for overstepping my boundaries. I can rest assured. I wouldn't dare. Hearing this, Danglong knew that the great immortal in front of him had seen through his previous indifference. He couldn't help but feel even more ashamed. Seeing this, Luo Fan didn't linger on this matter and said, Since fellow still understands the circulation pattern of the formation eye, then guarding the formation eye in the future is enough. I will take my leave now. Great immortal is leaving now. I wonder if you can stay here for a few more days until I completely understand the circulation pattern of the formation eye. Otherwise, I won't know where to go if I have any questions. Danglong hurriedly said. Luo Fan smiled and said, You don't need to worry about this matter. The information just now contained all the mysteries. If fellow comprehends it, there won't be many problems. But since fellow has this worry, then I will leave this thing. If fellow has any questions, you can enter it and I will know and answer them. Saying this, he raised his hand and grabbed at the air. A wave of energy of the earth rushed out from the ground and quickly rotated in front of him, compressed and condensed. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a fist-sized yellow jade. Then he casually patted it. There was a faint glow in the void. Then billions of specks of light rushed out from the yellow jade. In the surrounding void, it formed an extremely complicated and strange pattern that seemed to contain some indescribable mystery. After this pattern appeared, it suddenly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it fused with the fist-sized earthen yellow jade, causing a mysterious existence to appear within the earthen yellow jade, as if it contained another world. Chapter 338. The power of the ancient formation and pure yang again after the glow that was born from the void gradually scattered. The earthen yellow jade had already become incomparably ordinary. At a glance, it looked just like an ordinary piece of jade. Only by carefully examining it would one be able to vaguely see a complicated and mysterious imprint in the middle of the jade. Luo Fan handed the jade to you and said, I've added a sensing brand to it, so it is a low-level celestial device, but it has no ability to attack or defend. Its only function is to communicate with me. If you have anything to say to me, you can inject your will into it, and I will sense it. You took the earthy yellow jade, and a look of joy appeared on his face. Thank you, great immortal. With this, I won't have to worry about my cultivation in the future. Luo Fan smiled, then bid farewell to you and left. Although Yu was reluctant, he had no excuse to make Luo Fan stay. He could only reluctantly watch Luo Fan ride the nebula away, which seemed slow but was actually fast. Luo Fan stepped on the head of the nebula, and with a slight thought, the nebula traveled hundreds of millions of miles, heading toward Buzhou Mountain. Calculating the time, it was almost time for the god of Buzhou Mountain and the others to return to Buzhou Mountain. Of course, he could face the other innate gods with his magic treasure. But for these innate gods who had traveled the untainted land for tens of thousands of years because of his words, it was a little rude to face them with a magic treasure. That was why Luo Fan was so eager to return to Buzhou Mountain. Seeing Luo Fan leave, Yu's eyes were filled with admiration and gratitude. To him, Luo Fan could be said to have given him a new lease of life. He was a tortoise-shaped innate god. When his body was just born, it was already 100 miles in circumference. His body was many times stronger than other innate gods, at least thousands of times stronger than Luo Fan's body as a Pichio. With such a huge and powerful body, it was much more difficult to refine it, transform it, and develop a complete spiritual consciousness than ordinary innate deities. Under normal circumstances, if Luo Fan had not taught him the basic cultivation method, with Yu's aptitude, it would have taken dozens of periods before he could obtain a complete soul sense. In other words, it would have taken dozens of periods for him to completely enlighten his apertures. And if he wanted to refine his body and transform it, it would take hundreds or thousands of yuanwei. With such a long time, the probability of accidents happening was unimaginable. It could be said that under normal circumstances, the chances of seed dying and being refined into a magic weapon or being devoured by other innate gods were far greater than the chances of seed transforming into a real innate god and becoming a real innate god. Great immortal's kindness. I can only do my best to repay it. This thought flashed through Yu's mind, and these were all taken into his mind. Although Yu had only been enlightened for thousands of years, his old nest was located under the island where the ascenders from the spirit space resided. During these thousands of years, the living creatures living on the island had increased from hundreds of millions to billions. Because of the interaction between these living creatures, there were naturally countless different kinds of life, and these were all taken into his senses. Therefore, although you had only been enlightened for thousands of years, he already understood the ways of the world better than most of the innate gods in the untainted land. After this thought flashed through his mind, he directly sat down cross-legged and began to carefully understand the tens of billions of words and patterns that Luo Fan had sent into his sea of consciousness. Although Luo Fan only understood the operating rules of the formation I, the intuition brought by his earth body constantly reminded him that the existence that was sent in was even more precious than the earth body cultivation method. It was even more mysterious. As he continued to understand, his body gradually emitted an inexplicable and mysterious earth yuan qi, which gradually spread out and spread down along the top of the mountain. Gradually, it connected with the whole mountain. If Luo Fan was still here, he would be able to easily see that as the yuan qi of the earth seeped in, the entire primordial ancient formation had gradually formed a mysterious and indescribable connection with Ho's earth body. Ho's body seemed to gradually become a part of the primordial ancient formation during this process, and it began to bear the power of the ancient formation. The brown earth yuan qi continued to infiltrate, and the mysterious and inexplicable connection became stronger and stronger. At a certain moment a month later, when you completely recreated the orbit of the ancient formation I's orbit in his mind, the entire formation I's orbit appeared in his mind. An incomparably magical and incomparably profound feeling surged into Yu's mind, flowed into his sea of consciousness, and filled his entire divine soul. A feeling of being enveloped by a supreme power, as if he was standing in front of an enormous object that filled the heavens and earth, suddenly appeared. In that instant, you felt that he had become incomparably small, but also incomparably stable, as if he had returned to the time before he had consciousness, and had just been born from the source of chaotic yuan qi. This is the primitive, ancient formation. An inexplicable emotion involuntarily rose in Yu's mind. As he sighed with emotion, an endless amount of information suddenly came from all directions, from an unfathomable and unfathomable place. Through some unfathomable connection, it directly poured into his body, and through some unfathomable method, into his sea of consciousness, scouring his entire sea of consciousness. Rumble. Like the first sound that was born when the heavens and earth were split apart, the sound suddenly shook Yu's sea of consciousness. The sea of consciousness that was originally like an ocean of earth yuan qi suddenly began to tumble and change. The earth yuan qi quickly condensed and settled. In a short while, a small world was revealed. This world had a circumference of 10,000 miles and a height of 100 miles. The ground below was uneven, with deserts, mountains, and valleys. It was an incomparably desolate natural landscape. It looked as if the heavens and earth were naturally born, appearing incomparably natural. At this moment, Yu's spirit also turned into a human figure that emitted endless earthen yellow light. It was the same shape as his original body, and its height had reached a height of 10,000 feet. Although it was still insignificant in this sea of consciousness, it was countless times larger than before, although such a huge change had already occurred. But the change still did not stop. An extremely powerful force appeared out of nowhere, acting on the edge of his sea of consciousness. From all directions in the sky and underground, it constantly attacked the edge of his sea of consciousness, producing a boundless and powerful expansion force, wanting to continue expanding his sea of consciousness. However, at this moment, an unimaginable dizziness suddenly appeared. Under this dizziness, you instantly broke away from the extremely mysterious state where countless information was surging in. Even the dense earth yuan qi that was emitted from his original body quickly retracted. In an instant, it completely enveloped the entire mountain where the formation I was and retracted back into his body. This speed was countless times faster than a tortoise retracting its head. Insufficient cultivation, unable to withstand the power of the ancient formation. No matter what, you was a cultivator that had cultivated the earth body. At this moment, he understood what had just happened. The instant he used his earth body to fuse with the ancient formation, the primordial ancestral vein that was born from this world treated you as a part of it. It naturally incorporated it into its own operating mechanism. Although you had already attained Tao and was one of the more powerful cultivators, compared to the primordial ancient formation that had been born since ancient times and was inexplicably connected to every inch of space in the primordial world, he was still as insignificant as an ant. He could not even compare to the requirements of the ancient formation's operating mechanism. Because of this, after the ancient formation incorporated it into its own operating mechanism, endless information poured into Dunglong's body through some mysterious method. It wanted to raise Dunglong's cultivation realm, to convert Dunglong's power, to reach the lowest requirements of the ancient formation's operating mechanism. This was why there was such a huge change in his sea of consciousness. However, it was a pity that the improvement of cultivation was not something that could be achieved through brute force. Yu's own cultivation level was insufficient. No matter how much information was poured in, no matter how much power was poured in, there would not be any qualitative improvement. At most, it would solidify his foundation and remove the hidden dangers caused by his cultivation. Understanding this, Yu sighed in his heart. At the same time, he knew that guarding this place had greatly benefited him. He became even more grateful to Luo Fan for letting him guard this place. This formation, I should be in this mountain for 7 months and 3 days. After 7 months and 3 days, it will move to a valley 300 million miles away from here. I need to cultivate properly. This thought flashed through Yu's mind. Thinking of this, he gradually closed his eyes. The earth origin chi in his body circulated and he began to cultivate. Although he did not put himself in the eye of the formation, he was here and he was cultivating the earth cultivation method, so he naturally had a connection with the ancient formation. He could faintly sense some inexplicable changes on the ancient formation, and there was an endless amount of earth yuan qi gathering from all directions, gradually pouring into his body. It took Luo Fan another 3 months to return to the foot of Buzhou Mountain by riding the nebula. Standing in front of the time and space illusion, he sensed the aura of more than 100,000 innate gods in the time and space illusion into his senses. It had been more than 10 years since he came here last time. Compared to the time and the space-time illusion, it was more than 1,000 years. Although this period of time was very short for innate gods, the innate gods and the space-time illusion all had some big or small progress. Among them, several had broken through the realm of individual immortals and reached the realm of true immortals. It seems that these innate gods have also felt the pressure of the coming great trial. Luo Fan sighed in his heart. When Luo Fan sensed the existence of the great trial, he had only attained the earthly, immortal Tao fruit. Compared with the innate gods and the space-time illusion, even if he was powerful, it was not to the point of being incomparable. Since he could sense the coming of the great trial of heaven and earth tens of thousands of years ago, it was not impossible for these innate gods to feel the pressure before the coming of the great trial thousands of years ago. Pressing his body down, the nebula directly shrank and rushed directly into his universe in the sleeve without his command. Landing on the ground, the magic treasure of mobile phone, which was sitting cross-legged with its eyes closed, opened its eyes and looked at Luo Fan. Luo Fan did not speak. With a thought, countless information was directly injected into the body of the magic treasure of mobile phone through the unimaginable connection. The magic treasure of mobile phone was refined by Luo Fan and could be called his magic treasure. It also had the cultivation of the realm of golden immortal. In this untainted land, it could be regarded as an extraordinary existence. But after all, it was just a magic treasure. Compared to Luo Fan's body, it was still much weaker. Apart from occasionally obtaining strange cultivation methods from other innate gods and passing them on to Luo Fan's body, the magic treasure of mobile phone required Luo Fan to inject all kinds of magical powers and methods that he had comprehended from time to time. This time, when he went to see Lin Tian Nan, Luo Fan obtained a lot of unexpected gains. At this time, he passed these gains to the magic treasure of mobile phone. The magic treasure of mobile phone received a lot of information from Luo Fan, and its body shook slightly. As the power surged, it caused the surrounding primordial chi to flicker and produce traces of electricity. After a long time, it completely calmed down. When it opened its eyes again, there was a warm yellow color in its eyes. By receiving the thoughts passed on by Luo Fan, it directly merged its body with this piece of land. With the help of the earth body cultivation technique and the untainted land ancient formation, it obtained the blessing of the untainted land. With this blessing, the power of the magic treasure of mobile phone would at least increase by several times in the future. Although it could not break through the power of the golden immortal stage because of the magic treasure of the immortal path, it could still be more than 10 times stronger than a cultivator at the peak of the golden immortal stage. Seeing this, Luo Fan smiled slightly. With a thought, the magic treasure of mobile phone slightly shook, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the void. It's about time. Luo Fan looked up at the sky, and a faint smile appeared on his face. At this time, a ray of light quickly shot down from the void. In the blink of an eye, it had already landed in front of Luo Fan from a height of 90,000 miles. It suddenly condensed and turned into the appearance of a young man. This young man looked handsome, and his whole body exuded a scorching hot pure yang qi. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the deity returning stage, and he could step into the crossing disaster stage at any time. It was Luo Chunyang. This day happened to be the day that Luo Fan had originally agreed with him that Luo Chunyang would come to be inspected by his magic treasure of mobile phone every year. After Luo Chunyang landed, he hurriedly knelt down and greeted, "Grandson greets grandfather. May grandfather live forever." Luo Fan smiled slightly and raised his hand to help Luo Chunyang up. He said, "Get up, there's no need to be so polite." Although he had learned about the process of Luo Chunyang coming to ask questions all these years from the memory of the magic treasure of mobile phone, how could that compare to seeing it with his own eyes? At this time, seeing Luo Chunyang, whom he had not seen for tens of thousands of years, at this time, Luo Fan was also quite happy. Luo Chunyang was slightly stunned when he was helped up by Luo Fan. After a while, he was overjoyed, but also a little nervous as he looked at Luo Fan and asked, "Are you really grandfather?" Hearing this, Luo Fan knew what Luo Chunyang was asking. Clearly, he was asking if he was the original body. Therefore, he nodded and said, "Of course I am. After not seeing you for tens of thousands of years, you have grown." Grandfather. Hearing this, Luo Chunyang was finally convinced of his guess. He shouted with joy, and his eyes instantly turned red. Seeing Luo Chunyang so happy, Luo Fan was also very happy in his heart. But he only smiled and said, "Silly child, what's there to cry about? Although we haven't seen each other for tens of thousands of years, that magic treasure of mobile phone is also a part of me. Meeting it is the same as meeting me. There's no need to cry." "How is that the same?" Luo Chunyang said with slightly red eyes. "Although grandfather's magic treasure of mobile phone is very good, it is not grandfather after all. No matter how similar it is, there are still differences. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to recognize grandfather so quickly." Luo Fan smiled slightly. He already understood. Although the magic treasure of mobile phone was formed by a part of Luo Fan's consciousness fusing with the magic treasure, it was a special kind of magic treasure. To a certain extent, it could also be called Luo Fan. However, the magic treasure of mobile phone was not Luo Fan, because the magic treasure of mobile phone could not emit the same aura as Luo Fan. Moreover, because it could not contain much consciousness, it could not be as flexible as Luo Fan's original body. Just like how Luo Fan was talking to Luo Chunyang now, the magic treasure of mobile phone could not do it unless Luo Fan focused his consciousness on it. It was precisely because of this that Luo Chunyang discovered that the instant Luo Fan made his move, it was not the magic treasure of mobile phone in front of him, but Luo Fan's original body. Come. We haven't seen each other for tens of thousands of years. This time, stay for a few more days and have a good chat with grandfather," Luo Fan said with a smile. As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved it gently. The ground changed. Countless earth essence energy surged out and quickly condensed, compressed, and transformed. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a pavilion. There was a stone table and 2 stone stools. Although the pavilion, stone table, and stone stools were casually condensed by Luo Fan, they seemed to have been standing there since ancient times. They looked extremely ancient, simple, and natural. Every edge, every line, and every structure contained an indescribable beauty of nature. It was as if a certain great Tao of nature was contained in it. That was not because Luo Fan wanted to show off his cultivation level on purpose. Instead, after he reached the cultivation level of the primordial world, every move he made was naturally in line with the most fundamental principles. Every move he made would naturally cause the natural response of the primordial world. Even the simple matter of condensing the pavilion, stone table, and stone stools was naturally in line with the great Tao of nature. It naturally fused a certain understanding of the heavenly Tao into it. It was precisely because of that such a simple and natural pavilion appeared. Luo Chunyang had received Luo Fan's careful nurturing. Although he was only at the peak of the primordial reversion realm, his foundation was solid and almost no one could compare to him. The breadth of his knowledge was even greater than that of ordinary, innate gods who had attained the Tao. Naturally, he could tell at a glance that the pavilion was extraordinary. However, his expression did not change much. Over the years, he had long known how incredible Luo Fan's power was. It was only normal for him to create such a charm in the pavilion. Luo Fan had a thought and was about to take out the strange flowers and fruits from the dimension. Luo Chunyang saw the opportunity and hurriedly said, "Grandfather, wait. I have many flowers and fruits that Mother planted. I wanted to give them to you, but I couldn't meet you. Now that you are in a good mood, it's just right." Chapter 339. To express his filial piety, since Luo Chunyang was so filial, Luo Fan naturally would not stop him. He stopped taking the flowers and fruits in the medium-class world. He nodded and said to Luo Chunyang, "Oh, you actually thought of planting flowers and fruits on the moon. This is a good idea. Let me have a look." Hearing this, Luo Chunyang was overjoyed. He took out a lot of plates and plates from his heaven and earth in the palm and placed them on the stone table in the pavilion. Then he placed many exotic flowers and fruits, as well as bejeweled liquids. In the past tens of thousands of years, Guangpu had relied on her control of the moon to manage the Moon Palace, where she lived like a fairyland. Not only were there many exotic flowers and fruits brought from the untainted land, But there were also many exotic flowers and fruits that she cultivated according to the nature of the moon and the characteristic that the moon contained infinite lunar essence. Her achievements were quite gratifying. At this time, many of the flowers and fruits that appeared in front of Luo Fan were ones that he had never seen before. This made him quite curious. With the appearance of these flowers and fruits, there was an indescribable fragrance diffusing from the pavilion. It was refreshing. This fragrance was quite mysterious and could even cause the surrounding primordial chi to slightly vibrate. It seemed extremely extraordinary. To be able to cultivate such flowers and fruits, it seems that you and your mother have spent a lot of effort. Luo Fan smiled slightly. He stepped into the pavilion and sat down in front of the stone table. Then, he waved his hand and asked Luo Chunyang to sit down opposite him. Luo Chunyang knew that Luo Fan was quite stubborn in some aspects, so he did not dare to refuse. He carefully sat down opposite Luo Fan. Luo Fan casually raised a cup of bejeweled liquids and took a sip. It was cool in his mouth, and an indescribable strange taste burst out from his taste buds. It was instantly transmitted to his mind, making him feel an indescribable enjoyment. Good. Luo Fan could not help but praise. Grandpa, this is the wine that my mother specially refined for you. It has been settled for 888 years, and a lot of lunar essence has been added. It is incomparably delicious. Seeing Luo Fan's praise, Luo Chunyang said happily, "Not bad. Your mother really did put in a lot of effort. Although this wine is of no use to me, it is extremely precious to living beings like you who have yet to attain the Tao. It can purify your energy and, at the very least, it can make your energy purer. It is perfect for consolidating your foundation," Luo Fan praised. As he spoke, he raised his hand and poured himself another cup. Luo Chunyang had originally brought this item to show his filial piety to Luo Fan. Seeing that Luo Fan liked it, he was also very happy and quickly poured more wine. After drinking a few cups, Luo Fan tasted the various flowers and fruits placed in front of him. He picked up a strange fruit that looked like a stone tablet and took a bite. Sweet and gentle, it melted in his mouth and instantly turned into a flame after entering his stomach. It rushed along his body, making him feel warm all over. This is the heaven steel fruit. Mother specially cultivated it to go with this wine. What do you think, grandfather? Luo Chunyang asked expectantly. It is indeed not bad. The wine and the fruit go well together, showing the principle of yin and yang. Luo Fan smiled. However, he did not comment much this time. The wine and fruits were just a novelty to him, but he did not care too much about it. Next, he casually tasted the various wine and fruits that Luo Chunyang had put on display. Then, he began to ask about Luo Chunyang's recent situation over the past tens of thousands of years. Although the magic treasure saw a Luo Chunyang once a year, it only asked about his cultivation and gave him pointers. It did not ask about anything else. Therefore, even though Luo Fan had received all the memories of the magic treasure, he did not know the specific living conditions of Luo Chunyang and his mother. Luo Chunyang did not hide anything. He told Luo Fan everything about his life over the past tens of thousands of years. Luo Fan smiled and listened while casually asking about some things. The whole scene became a harmonious picture of grandfather and grandson chatting. During this conversation, Luo Fan gradually learned about Luo Chunyang and Guangpu's life on the moon. They didn't slack off because they set up their own sect. Not bad. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. Over the years, because Guangpu had the support of the entire moon, he could sense the movement of the entire moon at all times. He could sense the mysteries of the world that the structure of the moon revealed, so his cultivation progress was extremely fast. Although it was only tens of thousands of years, and she did not break through to the itinerant immortal realm, she had already reached the peak of the itinerant immortal realm. Even in the space-time illusion, her cultivation could be said to be at the peak. If she added the innate, inextinguishable spirit light that she obtained and the various profound divine abilities and techniques that Luo Fan taught her, then even an ordinary true immortal stage cultivator would not be able to compete with her. The conversation between Luo Fan and Luo Chunyang lasted for a day and a night. To them, time was just a symbol. A day and a night's conversation could not make them feel tired or uncomfortable. After a day and a night, Luo Fan finally stopped asking about Luo Chunyang's life. Then, he began to ask about his cultivation. Luo Chunyang came here once every year. Although he faced Luo Fan's magic treasure in the past, it was not much different from facing Luo Fan. He already had a lot of experience, so without any stumbling, he demonstrated his own cultivation while explaining it to Luo Fan. Luo Fan's cultivation was thousands of times stronger than Guangpu's. Compared to Luo Chunyang, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Luo Chunyang only needed to show him a little, and he already knew all of Luo Chunyang's cultivation. He could even tell which of Luo Chunyang's abilities had a future and how long it would take for him to cultivate them. Those that didn't have a future and might reach a bottleneck at any time or be unable to cultivate them due to an accident. Naturally, there was no need to hide anything from his grandson. Luo Fan's casual guidance was just a few simple words, but it was as if the fog in front of Luo Chunyang had been lifted and the indescribable great Tao was easily revealed in front of Luo Chunyang. It made Luo Chunyang feel that the answers to the problems that even his mother could not solve in his cultivation were displayed in front of him without reservation. Although that magical treasure was also a part of Luo Fan's. However, the will that Luo Fan left on the magical treasure was, after all, limited. And because the magic treasure was a body, it could not fully display Luo Fan's cultivation. Therefore, although the guidance to Luo Chunyang was thorough, compared to Luo Fan's body, there was still an obvious gap. After receiving a few words of advice from Luo Fan, Luo Chunyang realized the gap. He was full of admiration. After all, they met once every year. In addition, there was also Guangpu, so Luo Chunyang did not have many questions. In a few days, he finished asking. On this day, when Luo Fan saw that Luo Chunyang had no more questions to ask, he said, "You are now at the peak of the reversion state. Although you can break through to the crossing state, you'll have to go through 12 heavenly tribulations. It will be different from your mother's 9 heavenly tribulations, and it will be more powerful. I see that you do not have a good way to go through the heavenly tribulations, so I will teach you this method." As Luo Fan said this, he raised his hand and pointed. A bit of spiritual light rushed out of his hand and entered the mud ball between Luo Chunyang's eyebrows. It exploded and turned into countless complicated and mysterious words and patterns. It instantly entered Luo Chunyang's sea of consciousness and fused with his spirit that had completely become a connate soul. In an instant, Luo Chunyang's eyes became slightly dazed. There seemed to be countless words and patterns flashing in the depths of his pupils. After a while, Luo Chunyang said happily, "Thank you for your generous gift, grandfather. Although this supreme annihilation method is quite powerful, it is only a method for you to go through the heavenly tribulations. It is not good for you to put the cart before the horse. You cannot slack off in your cultivation because of this method," Luo Fan said. "Understand. I will definitely not let this method affect the cultivation of the 9 Heaven Sun transformation technique," Luo Chunyang hurriedly said. At this moment, there was an irrepressible excitement in his mind. In the past tens of thousands of years, although Luo Chunyang had seen Luo Fan once every year, Luo Fan had never personally taught him any cultivation method. Usually, he only gave him pointers on his cultivation, gave him pointers on some of the basics, and changed some of his misconceptions and wrong views on cultivation. What he had been practicing all this time was the 9 Heaven Sun transformation technique. Although this technique was profound and contained infinite mysteries and infinite truths of heaven and earth, Luo Chunyang had been cultivating this technique for tens of thousands of years. He could not help but look forward to a new technique to cultivate. Needless to say, the technique that Luo Fan had passed down was already evident from the 9 Heaven Sun transformation technique. Although he had not looked at the supreme annihilation technique in detail, he could already tell that even if this technique was inferior to the Nine Heaven Sun transformation technique, it would not be inferior by much. How could he not be happy? When Luo Fan saw that Luo Chunyang's eyes were faintly filled with uncontrollable surprise, he could not help but smile. It seems that he has been holding back all these years. Such a thought flashed in his mind. However, he did not care. Under his guidance, Luo Chunyang's foundation had been consolidated to an unimaginable level. Even if he went through the heavenly tribulations like this, he would probably be able to go through 9 heavenly tribulations without the slightest injury. With the supreme annihilation method, it would not be a problem for him to go through 12 heavenly tribulations. Under such circumstances, it didn't matter how he cultivated the supreme art of annihilation. The reason why he reminded Luo Chunyang like this was so that he wouldn't slack off too much. After chatting for a while, Luo Fan said to Luo Chunyang, "You can go now. Your father is now cultivating in my world. He should let you meet him, but he has to prepare for the heavenly tribulation in a few years and cannot be distracted. Forget it. It's better to meet him after he finishes his cultivation." Father is going to go through the heavenly tribulation? Luo Chunyang was both surprised and delighted. It will happen in a few years. Luo Fan smiled slightly. Then I have to tell Mother quickly. Mother has missed Father so much these years. Luo Chunyang said happily. Luo Chunyang was not worried about whether his father would be in danger during the heavenly tribulation. His confidence in Luo Fan was even stronger than Luo Fan's confidence in him. It was almost to the point of blind faith. In his opinion, Luo Fu was under Luo Fan's protection. Going through the heavenly tribulation was just a formality. There would not be any danger at all. Luo Fan saw Luo Chunyang's expression and knew what he was thinking. He could not help but smile bitterly, but he did not change his view. He only said, "Okay, there's nothing else here. You can go now." Luo Chunyang heard this, and, although he was reluctant, he could only bid farewell reluctantly. But before he left behind many flowers and fruits to show his filial piety to Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled slightly. Although he did not care about the flowers and fruits, he did not want to hurt his filial piety, so he put the flowers and fruits away. Then, he raised his hand and waved. A ray of spiritual light wrapped around Luo Chunyang. With a shake, Luo Chunyang turned into a long rainbow and shot straight into the sky. In a short while, he broke through the 9 layers of astral wind, lightning, and fire, and disappeared into the endless starry sky. Another short while later, he was above the moon. That speed was tens of thousands of times faster than Luo Chunyang's flying speed. This was also the way Luo Chunyang traveled between the moon and Buzhou Mountain in the past tens of thousands of years. When he returned to the moon, it was Luo Fan's Dharma treasure that sent him back. When he came to Buzhou Mountain, it was Guangpu who sent him back. This could not be helped. After all, with Luo Chunyang's own speed, a year was not enough for him to rush from the moon to Buzhou Mountain. After Luo Chunyang left, Luo Fan raised his hand and gently waved. The pavilion, stone table, and stone bench that he had formed by condensing the earth's spiritual energy instantly trembled and turned back into the yellow earth's spiritual energy. It sank down and instantly returned to the earth. At this moment, he had a thought. A look of joy appeared on his face. He lifted his foot and took a light step forward. He was already in midair, and an auspicious cloud that was enveloped by the sound of the great Tao and endless rays of light appeared under his feet. After he had done all this, a long rainbow was cast in his direction from afar. This long rainbow was dark green and contained a pressure that could suppress the heaven and earth. It faintly resonated with Buzhou Mountain and seemed to be able to obtain the aura of the absolute power of Buzhou Mountain. This dark green long rainbow was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Luo Fan. It suddenly stopped, fell, and condensed. It turned into an innate god. It was the god of Buzhou Mountain. At this moment, the god of Buzhou Mountain had used all his strength to hurry on his journey. Therefore, the power in his body had not stabilized yet. As the power around him surged, It produced an extremely mysterious aura. The aura seemed to resonate with Buzhou Mountain, which was not far away. It also seemed like it could intercept the power of Buzhou Mountain for its own use at any time. After a long while, the aura gradually disappeared. It revealed its seemingly ordinary figure. "Greetings, benefactor. I haven't seen you for tens of thousands of years, but you're still so elegant. I'm really envious of you." The god of Buzhou Mountain bowed delightedly. Luo Fan quickly helped the god of Buzhou Mountain up and said with a smile, "You're too courteous, my friend. Compared to your great improvement, I'm far behind." Luo Fan did not use the sun and moon true pupils to observe the god of Buzhou Mountain. However, he could already tell by his own senses that the god of Buzhou Mountain had already stepped into the realm of true immortals. The Great Wood Tao-proving technique had already fused with the two cultivation techniques that he had passed on to him in the past, forming a brand new, extremely profound cultivation technique that pointed directly to the Great Tao. It was no longer what it used to be. "It's all thanks to you, benefactor. Without your guidance, how could I have cultivated these minor techniques?" The god of Buzhou Mountain was still very respectful. Luo Fan smiled. He already knew how stubborn the god of Buzhou Mountain was, so he did not continue to dwell on the issue. He invited the god of Buzhou Mountain to his cave abode, the Seeker Cave. The god of Buzhou Mountain happily agreed to Luo Fan's suggestion. Therefore, Luo Fan did not hesitate. With a thought, the magic cloud dragged them to the front of the Seeker Cave in the blink of an eye. The god of Buzhou Mountain's cultivation base was thousands of times stronger than before. However, he still felt so small and powerless in front of Luo Fan. Luo Fan was like a towering mountain, a complete and huge world. In front of him, the god of Buzhou Mountain could not compare with him at all. He could not even think of resisting. The god of Buzhou Mountain had never felt this kind of feeling before. However, the rich experience he had accumulated in the untainted land for tens of thousands of years made him instantly understand that there was a huge gap between his cultivation base and Luo Fan's. It could even be said that although he had made great progress in the past tens of thousands of years, the gap between him and his benefactor had not decreased. Instead, it had increased a lot. This made the god of Buzhou Mountain secretly feel discouraged, but he also felt extremely grateful. Such a powerful benefactor actually treats me so politely. How generous he is. Luo Fan dispersed the magic cloud, and a yellow-turbaned strongman came to serve him. After inviting the god of Buzhou Mountain into the cave residence and sitting down, Luo Fan asked, "According to my calculation, it should take you several years to come back. Why did you come back so soon?" "Ha! You don't know?" The god of Buzhou Mountain could not help but feel proud when he heard Luo Fan's question. Luo Fan could not help but smile and said, "I'm not Pangu. How can I know everything? Although I know this, your performance has always been so amazing. I can't help but wonder if there's anything you can't do." The god of Buzhou Mountain seemed to be more at ease than before. At least, he would not have dared to mention these words to Luo Fan in the past. The reason for this was very normal. It was because his cultivation base had improved many times compared to before, and his knowledge was also much broader than before. Hearing the god of Buzhou Mountain say so, Luo Fan just smiled. Although the god of Buzhou Mountain was a little different from before, seemed to be more open, and did not seem to be as respectful to him as before, he was more satisfied and delighted with the god of Buzhou Mountain's performance. After all, if the god of Buzhou Mountain was still as overly respectful as before and only knew how to obey his orders, what was the difference between him and a wooden man? Chapter 340. Luo Fan chatted casually with the god of Buzhou Mountain in the Seeking Cave. They talked about the various interesting things that the god of Buzhou Mountain had encountered in the primordial world over the past tens of thousands of years. Luo Fan had not encountered this kind of casual conversation for tens of thousands of years. However, he felt relaxed. He had a strange feeling of chatting with a friend on Earth in the future. In the past tens of thousands of years, Although the distance that the god of Buzhou Mountain had traveled was not as much as Luo Fan, it had reached an unimaginably huge number. There was naturally a lot to talk about. In the continuous narration, a rather magnificent scene of the primordial world appeared in front of Luo Fan. While listening to the god of Buzhou Mountain's narration, Luo Fan enjoyed the rare relaxation. At the same time, he was secretly happy for the god of Buzhou Mountain. Through the tens of thousands of years of traveling the primordial world and inviting the innate god to Buzhou Mountain, the god of Buzhou Mountain had not only raised his cultivation realm to the realm of true immortals, but his own knowledge and mentality had also surpassed the limits of Buzhou Mountain. Now, he could already look at the entire primordial world. Although this change did not directly affect his power or cultivation realm, it broke the shackles that had originally restricted the god of Buzhou Mountain to a higher level. It allowed him to unleash his potential more easily. I didn't expect you to have such rich experiences in the past few years. Luo Fan sighed. It's all thanks to you, benefactor, for handing this important matter to me. If you hadn't given me the opportunity, I would definitely not have had the chance to travel around the primordial world. The god of Buzhou Mountain expressed his gratitude again. In the heart of the god of Buzhou Mountain, Luo Fan was really as important as a mountain to him. It was as if he had been reborn. The biggest reason why he could transform was because of the various techniques that Luo Fan had imparted to him. Moreover, Luo Fan had played a part in the benefits he had gained from traveling the untainted land in the past tens of thousands of years. After all, although traveling in the untainted land was very beneficial to his knowledge and mentality, if he didn't cultivate diligently, if he didn't have the space-time formation given by Luo Fan to lengthen his cultivation time, not to mention making such great progress, his cultivation might even regress to an unsalvageable state. It could be said that in his heart, if it wasn't for Luo Fan, he wouldn't have such cultivation and cultivation. Luo Fan could not help but smile when he heard the Buzhou Mountain god mention his gratitude again. He said, I still have to thank you for this matter. Please don't say such words again. It will only make me feel ashamed. Benefactor, you don't have to be ashamed. The Buzhou Mountain god hurriedly said, What I said is absolutely true. Everything I said comes from the bottom of my heart. Luo Fan slightly waved his hand, looking indifferent, but he didn't continue to talk about these things. He said, You don't have to say this again. I already know what to do. I see that your cultivation seems to have fused the three pure spiritual techniques into one, combining the advantages of the three pure spiritual techniques to create a new one. It's really admirable. I wonder if I can see it. The Buzhou Mountain god knew that Luo Fan didn't want him to say words of gratitude, so he could only let it go. He just remembered Luo Fan's great kindness in his heart. Hearing Luo Fan's question, he couldn't help but say helplessly, Benefactor, you have a good eye. Yes, the three pure spiritual techniques have been fused into one, but that's just the product of coincidence. The Great Wood Dao verification technique is very mysterious and contains an extremely terrifying fusion power. The reason why the three pure spiritual techniques can be fused is because of the natural changes of the Great Wood Dao verification technique. I still can't understand it, so I'm hoping that you can give me some advice. As he spoke, he did not hesitate and lifted a finger. Instantly, a ray of dark green light rushed out from the finger of his right hand and meandered in the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a divine tree that seemed to be able to support the heavens and the earth. The tree's crown was even more overwhelming. This divine tree was somewhat similar to sandalwood, but it was very different. Every leaf, every branch, and every root seemed to contain a complete world that encompassed everything. The entire divine tree seemed to have countless worlds and worlds piled up according to some mysterious method over the past 100 years. With the appearance of this divine tree, the void space rippled slightly. There seemed to be a faint sound of the great path appearing out of thin air, revolving around this divine tree and gradually spreading in all directions. Then it filled the entire cave abode. When Luo Fan saw this divine tree and sensed the sound of the great Tao in the void, he couldn't help but be shocked. Even though there were no words or diagrams on the divine tree, it was absolutely not something else. It was an extremely profound and complicated scripture that even contained some sort of supreme grand Tao. Golden and silver light flashed in his eyes. In an instant, countless information flowed through his mind from this divine tree from his eyes. After a while, Luo Fan let out a long breath. So that's how it is. It's a pity that this cultivation technique doesn't seem to be complete. If it was complete, even the cultivation technique that I cultivate would be far inferior to it. Luo Fan sighed. Benefactor, you're too modest. Even if this cultivation technique is complete, it definitely can't compare to the cultivation technique that Benefactor has comprehended. Moreover, this cultivation technique seems to have reached its limit. No matter how I activate it, no matter how hard I try, I can't make it more complete. The god of Buzhou Mountain also sighed. Luo Fan smiled. He did not dwell on the advantages and disadvantages of his cultivation technique and the cultivation technique revealed by this tree. Naturally, he knew what kind of existence this divine tree was. This divine tree was formed from a mysterious transformation of the great wood Dao verification technique, which had fused with the two divine Dao cultivation techniques that he had imparted to the god of Buzhou Mountain. The Great Wood Dao verification technique was a mysterious cultivation technique that Daoist Sandalwood had comprehended with the help of Pangu's origin spirit. It cultivated the path of true spirit. When cultivated to the peak, one could even place their true spirit in the void and control the entire primordial universe. To a certain extent, it was similar to the primordial spirit four realms that Luo Fan had created, but it was more exquisite and complicated. Its future could be said to be brighter. The reason why there were no words or pictures on it was because this Great Wood Dao verification technique was a natural fusion of the two cultivation techniques. It was not something that the god of Buzhou Mountain had fused through his own comprehension of the three cultivation techniques. It was precisely because the three cultivation techniques were a natural fusion that even the god of Buzhou Mountain did not know about. As a result, the god of Buzhou Mountain could not fully understand the secret of the cultivation technique. Naturally, he cannot describe it with words or show it with pictures. Therefore, if he wanted to impart this cultivation technique to others, he could only show the Dao state contained in the cultivation technique and let others comprehend it through this Dao state. As for how much they could comprehend, it would depend on the opportunities and luck of the others. Of course, all this depravity did not have much meaning. Luo Fan's cultivation level was tens of thousands of times higher than that of the god of Buzhou Mountain. He could see through the secrets that the god of Buzhou Mountain could not understand at a glance. As he looked through the divine tree, the cultivation technique that was formed after the Great Wood Dao verification technique had fused with the other two cultivation techniques took shape in his mind. It was a pity that the god of Buzhou Mountain could not fully comprehend the fused cultivation technique, so the Dao state that was shown was not complete. As a result, the cultivation technique that was formed in Luo Fan's mind was also incomplete. There are many parts missing. I wanted to help you solve some hidden problems, but I didn't expect things to turn out this way. Now, I can only organize the cultivation technique that you have comprehended into a cultivation technique and give it to you. I'm ashamed, Luo Fan said, feeling a little ashamed. Benefactor, if you can do this, it's already a great kindness to me. The god of Buzhou Mountain heard this, and the divine tree that looked like a world tree suddenly collapsed, turning into dark green light that scattered in all directions. The god of Buzhou Mountain was the first to kneel down, looking quite excited. Although what Luo Fan said was only to organize the incomplete cultivation technique that he had comprehended into words and pictures, it was already a great benefit for the god of Buzhou Mountain. Moreover, it could even be said to be the greatest benefit. After all, the Great Wood Dao verification technique was in the god of Buzhou Mountain's body, which was in his true spirit. As his cultivation progressed and his cultivation level improved, it would keep appearing. One day, he would be able to completely express it and teach it to others. The reason why he had not done it yet was because he knew about the cultivation technique, but did not know how to do it. Because of the natural effect of the cultivation technique, his cultivation level could keep improving. However, it would be quite difficult for him to cultivate it on his own. If Luo Fan organized it into words and pictures, the situation would be different. What Luo Fan had organized was equivalent to the key to open a door. As long as the god of Buzhou Mountain could study these words and pictures carefully, he would be able to get closer to the true meaning of the great Wood Dao verification technique step by step. It would also greatly reduce the difficulty for him to cultivate this cultivation technique on his own initiative. For the god of Buzhou Mountain, this was a great benefit. Seeing that the god of Buzhou Mountain was so excited that he was about to kneel down and kowtow, Luo Fan was slightly surprised. He hurriedly helped the god of Buzhou Mountain up and said, "Fellow Taoist, aren't you trying to kill me? You and I are friends, but you're bowing to me like this. How can I accept it? You can't. The god of Buzhou Mountain said firmly, "Why do you say that, my savior? You have given me a new life and even given me the chance to transcend. Without you, I would still be cultivating at the foot of the mountain, not knowing the spring flowers and autumn moons. How could I have my current cultivation? How could I know that the world is so vast? It's just a little bow, what's the big deal?" Luo Fan just made an excuse and pressed the god of Buzhou Mountain down on the seat. Both of them were innate gods with extremely high cultivation realms. They had always been entangled in the kind of you insist on worshiping, I insist on refusing kind of entanglement. After a short while, Mountain God Buzhou and Luo Fan had already understood the intentions of both parties. They had also come to a compromise and changed the topic. After that, Luo Fan heaved a sigh of relief. He said, "I'll pass this Dharma incantation to you now." As he spoke, he raised his hand and waved. The dark green light emitted by the god of Buzhou Mountain, which was originally scattered in the void, quickly gathered from all directions. Soon, it condensed into the image of a thick book in front of him. Then he pushed it gently. The existence that looked like a book arrived in front of the god of Buzhou Mountain. Luo Fan had already attained the primordial unity Dao fruit. It could be said that any power that existed in the primordial world was like looking at the lines on his palm. There were no secrets to him. It was the same for the dark green power that the god of Buzhou Mountain had cultivated after cultivating the great Wood Dao verification technique. He could control it at will, condense it, and add words. To him, that was just a thought. It was not an impressive technique. The god of Buzhou Mountain was already used to Luo Fan doing that. He raised his hand and took the book. With a thought, the book shrunk and rushed up through his arm. In the blink of an eye, it had already rushed into his Niwen palace. It rushed into his sea of consciousness through a mysterious location, and in the blink of an eye, it fused into his soul that had already become a giant tree that reached the heavens. As the mysterious light in the form of a book entered, the huge tree trembled slightly. Countless complicated and profound words and complicated patterns quickly flowed around it. At the same time, countless words and patterns flashed in the eyes of the god of Buzhou Mountain. His eyes also became slightly dazed. With one look, Luo Fan knew that the god of Buzhou Mountain was already comprehending the Dharma incantation that he had sent into his sea of consciousness. He smiled and did not care. He sat cross-legged and waited quietly. There were not many complete words in the Dharma incantation, and the one that Luo Fan had sent was not complete. Therefore, there were only tens of thousands of words in total. Normally, the god of Buzhou Mountain would be able to finish reading it in an instant. However, in reality, by the time the god of Buzhou Mountain finished reading the Dharma incantation and roughly comprehended it, 3 months had passed. After 3 months, the god of Buzhou Mountain's eyes moved slightly, and his eyes that had been dazed for 3 months regained their clarity. The moment he regained his clarity, the power inside his body that could not be completely restrained was instantly restrained. Even if it was Luo Fan, he might not be able to sense the level of power in his body if he was not careful. Sensing the change, a faint smile appeared on Luo Fan's face. Naturally, Luo Fan knew very well what the change meant. It meant that the god of Buzhou Mountain's cultivation realm and power did not improve much, but his control over his cultivation realm, cultivation base, and power had improved. Although he had not reached the acme of perfection, it was only a matter of time. "Congratulations, my friend," said Luo Fan with a smile. "Thank you, benefactor." "Benefactor, you're indeed thousands of times more powerful than Buzhou. You only took a glance, and you've gained more than what Buzhou had comprehended for tens of thousands of years." Buzhou only slightly comprehended the Dharma incantation that Benefactor passed to him, and his control over his power has improved. The god of Buzhou Mountain bowed and said, "I didn't just take a glance. Don't forget that I've also obtained the Great Wood Dao verification technique tens of thousands of years ago. I probably spent more than tens of thousands of years on it." Luo Fan shook his head and said with a smile. The god of Buzhou Mountain just shook his head. Obviously, he did not think that what Luo Fan said was true, but he also knew that it was meaningless to say it, so he did not say it anymore. He just began to ponder about the various problems in the previous Dharma incantation that Luo Fan had. That Dharma incantation was compiled by Luo Fan according to the Tao state that the god of Buzhou Mountain had displayed. However, this Dharma incantation also contained a trace of Luo Fan's comprehension from an extremely high perspective. Luo Fan had already attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, so how terrifying was his cultivation realm? Even this trace of comprehension was extremely profound and indescribable for the god of Buzhou Mountain. Even if it was not as profound as the supreme meaning of the Great Wood Dao verification technique, it was not something that he could comprehend in just 3 months. Since Luo Fan had included this trace of comprehension in this Dharma incantation, he naturally had the intention of teaching it to the god of Buzhou Mountain. Hearing the god of Buzhou Mountain's question, he did not hide anything and told the god of Buzhou Mountain all kinds of comprehensions he had comprehended. His narration was also equivalent to a sermon. For a moment, a faint glow appeared out of thin air and filled the cave abode. At the same time, there was a faint fragrance. The words that Luo Fan said changed slightly after he said it. The lingering sound seemed to cause some mysterious changes in a void and was transformed into some kind of sound of the great Tao by some incredible mechanism, lingering for 3 days. The god of Buzhou Mountain listened carefully and felt that it was an eye-opener. His comprehension of the Great Wood Dao verification technique after the integration was constantly improving during this process. The Dharma incantation that Luo Fan had taught him was constantly becoming complete as he comprehended it. Unknowingly, time passed by slowly. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. By this time, Luo Fan had completely explained all the comprehensions that he had integrated into the Dharma incantation. The length of the Dharma incantation that the god of Buzhou Mountain had sorted out from the Great Wood Dao verification technique had more than doubled. "Thank you for teaching me, benefactor. I will not let you down and cultivate the Dharma body as soon as possible." The god of Buzhou Mountain bowed respectfully to Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled and said, "Just do your best." He was quite satisfied with the god of Buzhou Mountain. He had specially preached to the god of Buzhou Mountain, not because he liked to teach others, but because of the great tribulation of the untainted land in thousands of years. The Great Tribulation, this time, was too important. Even though Luo Fan had attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, he did not dare to say that he could definitely survive this great tribulation of heaven and earth. Under such circumstances, he had tried his best to gather all the forces that could be gathered to survive this great tribulation. In addition, this great tribulation would definitely affect a large area of the entire untainted land. It was impossible for him to stay in one place and take charge. He needed to travel around and solve the problems that occurred in various places of the untainted land. Buzhou Mountain was the pillar of the northwest of the untainted land and the backbone of Pangu. It was very important to the untainted land. It was a place that could not be lost, but it still needed a powerful, innate god to take charge. The god of Buzhou Mountain was the mountain god of Buzhou Mountain. In this untainted land, Who else was more suitable to take charge of Buzhou Mountain besides him? If he was in charge, the possibility of Buzhou Mountain being conquered by the free transformation would be greatly reduced. Chapter 341. Time Tunnel. Awkward scripture. It was impossible for the god of Buzhou Mountain to know Luo Fan's true intentions. He did not know that Luo Fan wanted him to guard Buzhou Mountain. However, based on the knowledge he'd accumulated over the past few tens of thousands of years, he was able to tell that Luo Fan wasn't preaching the Tao to him without any objective. At this moment, Luo Fan's words indicated that even though he knew that Luo Fan had other objectives, he still accepted Luo Fan's good intentions, and he wouldn't mind at all. Suddenly, Luo Fan recalled the interesting story that the god of Buzhou Mountain told him, and quickly asked, "Fellow Taoist, where's the space-time tunnel that can move through the void and travel billions of miles in an instant?" According to the god of Buzhou Mountain, he would need at least 10 years to reach Buzhou Mountain. However, he did find a very strange cave in a place over 10 trillion miles away from Buzhou Mountain. Passing through this crypt was like passing through an inconceivable tunnel. Although it consumed an enormous amount of energy, it shortened the time taken by 10 years. In the blink of an eye, he had traversed a distance of more than 10 trillion kilometers and arrived at a location more than 3 billion kilometers away from Buzhou Mountain. Because of this, he was able to arrive at Buzhou Mountain so quickly. The untainted land was so vast. Naturally, all sorts of wonderful and mysterious sceneries could appear. The appearance of such a space-time tunnel was not something difficult for Luo Fan to understand. Therefore, Luo Fan did not pay much attention to it before. At this moment, he suddenly felt that there seemed to be some kind of opportunity for him in the space-time tunnel. So he asked. Upon hearing Luo Fan's question, the Buzhou Mountain god answered without hesitation. "Are you interested in that space-time tunnel? I'll tell you where the space-time tunnel is." As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed. A speck of dark green light rushed out of his hand and formed an outline in the void. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge, complicated map. At the edge of the map, there was a flickering dot. With a glance, Luo Fan instantly realized that the terrain outlined on this enormous map was the topographic map of the Buzhou Mountain and its surrounding area of over 3 billion miles. That flickering spot was at the edge of the map. Clearly, it was the exit of the space-time tunnel. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist. This space-time tunnel is a great opportunity for me." Luo Fan raised his hand and waved at the map. The map was instantly compressed and turned into a water-like dark green brilliance. It surged into his sleeve universe. Then, he bowed to the god of Buzhou Mountain and said, "Benefactor, you're exaggerating. It's my honor to be able to help you. There's no need to thank me." The Buzhou Mountain god hurriedly said, "Since you have a fortuitous encounter in that location, I won't disturb you any further. Goodbye. Take care, fellow Taoist. Maybe you can go to the space-time illusionary land to meet some old friends," Luo Fan said with a smile. Both of them were straightforward people and did not exchange too many pleasantries. After the god of Buzhou Mountain god bowed, he turned around and turned into a long rainbow that dashed out. Then, he suddenly descended and rushed toward the foot of Buzhou Mountain. In a short while, he arrived at the foot of Buzhou Mountain, where the space-time illusionary land was located. After Luo Fan left, his magic treasure automatically appeared. At the moment, it was sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the space-time illusionary land. When the god of Buzhou Mountain god saw Luo Fan's magic treasure, he was slightly stunned. But soon he realized that it was similar to the magic treasure. With admiration in his eyes, he bowed to Luo Fan's magic treasure. Luo Fan's magic treasure was a part of Luo Fan. Luo Fan only needed to use his mind to know what he meant. He bowed back and waved his hand to open a door in the space-time illusionary land for the god of Buzhou Mountain god to enter. The god of Buzhou Mountain god thanked Luo Fan for his magic treasure and entered the space-time illusionary land. Most of the innate deities in the space-time illusionary land were invited by the god of Buzhou Mountain god. Naturally, He had a good relationship with them. Now that he had returned to Buzhou Mountain, the god of Buzhou Mountain god naturally wanted to meet these innate deities. With a thought, Luo Fan knew that the god of Buzhou Mountain god had listened to his suggestion and went to the space-time illusionary land. With a faint smile, Zhang Xian made some calculations. He knew that Yu Su and the others would come back in a few years at the earliest, or at least after Luo Fu had passed the heavenly tribulation. But he did not need to wait here. With a thought, the nebula rushed out of his universe in his sleeve. With a sudden turn and a push, it placed Luo Fan between the two horns on its head. Then, with a long cry, it brought Luo Fan to the location of the space-time tunnel, which seemed slow but was actually very fast. The speed of a nebula had been described several times, so there was no need to repeat it. In just a short while, he had already brought Luo Fan to a location that was more than 3 billion miles away. There was a very ordinary ancient tree, which was evolved from the combination of the earth fiend true fire and the innate wood chi. The branches and leaves of the ancient tree were ordinary, and it looked simple. It was only 1,000 feet tall, and the trunk was only a few feet in diameter. It was indeed inconspicuous in the untainted world. If not for the map, even if Luo Fan had attained the primordial unity Dao fruit, he would not have discovered the abnormality here. It seems that specialization has its advantages. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. The god of Buzhou Mountain God could discover the abnormality here because the composition of the ancient tree was also related to the nature of the innate wood chi and the great wood Dao proving technique. With a thought, the nebula shrank and entered his sleeve universe concealing sleeve. He lifted his hand and stepped lightly. His body descended and instantly arrived under the ancient tree. As soon as he arrived, Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon turned, and he discovered the abnormality of the ancient tree. The aura of the ancient tree was restrained. Although any innate god could tell at a glance that it was evolved from the combination of the earth fiend true fire and the innate wood chi, they would carelessly overlook the strange position in the center of the ancient tree, which contained incredible mysteries. Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon had the power to see through the origin and see through the past and the future. With a thought, the changes in the core of the ancient tree were displayed in his eyes without reservation. It was a singularity. The singularity contained endless energy, and it also contained some supreme mystery that was naturally carried by the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was because of this energy and mystery that the space-time inside the singularity underwent some mysterious and unpredictable changes. It seemed that the void was pierced, and it seemed to be distorted. It's really here. With a thought, Luo Fan had countless lights and shadows flowing through his mind. Those lights and shadows were the changes of the ancient tree over the past thousands of years. In the lights and shadows, he also saw the image of the god of Buzhou Mountain coming from the singularity, and he also saw the changes of the singularity in the process. It actually contains such mysteries, although it can't be compared to the space-time formation that I set up in terms of single use. It wins in terms of breadth. If I can understand the mysteries of space-time contained in it, my progress in the Tao of space-time will be beyond imagination. Luo Fan sighed with emotion. As his understanding of the untainted world deepened, Luo Fan had a deeper understanding of the natural power of the untainted world. He had already attained the primordial unity Tao fruit, and even possessed the power to command heaven and earth with his words. However, compared to the natural power of the untainted world, it was still rather insignificant. The various natural sceneries and natural scenes of the primordial world contained countless mysteries that even he could not understand. Not to mention the untainted ancient formation, which was a natural formation that had a subtle connection with the entire untainted world, just the singularity in front of him that could communicate with two distant locations in the untainted world already contained many mysteries that he could not imagine even after attaining the primordial unity Tao fruit. After sighing with emotion, Luo Fan did not hesitate. With a thought, his body shook, and he turned into a long rainbow that crashed into the ancient tree. In the blink of an eye, he crashed into the ancient tree. Through the body of the ancient tree, he looked into the inside of the ancient tree and came to the surroundings of the singularity. After attaining the true pupils of the sun and moon, after attaining the primordial unity Tao fruit, Luo Fan had an understanding of the elusive and elusive heavenly secrets that surpassed ordinary innate gods. At this moment, he could sense that there was something in the space-time tunnel in the singularity that was attracting him. It was a sense of opportunity. The singularity looked extremely small from the outside, almost indiscernible. However, when he approached the singularity, Luo Fan realized that the singularity was extremely vast. It seemed to cover the sky, as wide as the sun and moon, and filled his entire field of vision. The speed of the space-time transition is so natural. This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. He moved and arrived at the edge of the singularity. With a turn, he condensed his own body. The singularity emitted a very obscure and mysterious aura. It was as if the space-time within it was a separate entity, as if it contained an independent world. The space-time around the singularity also seemed to be affected by the aura emitted by the singularity. This influence did not change the flow of time, but it seemed to expand a surrounding space-time by 1 billion times. It was precisely because of this that Luo Fan felt that the singularity had become so vast that it covered the sky. After entering the ancient tree, Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon didn't rest for even a moment. He constantly scanned the surroundings of the singularity and all the mysteries of time and space inside the ancient tree into his mind. Then, through the constant flashes of light in his mind, he incorporated these mysteries into his own cultivation system. Luo Fan's cultivation realm was too profound. Although the space-time mysteries around the singularity were profound and incredible, they were still affected by the singularity after all. Compared to his cultivation realm, it wasn't enough. At least, when he incorporated the space-time mysteries inside the ancient tree into his own perception, Luo Fan's gains were very ordinary. It only allowed him to make slight improvements in extending space and enlarging the void inside the space-time formation. After approaching the singularity, Luo Fan's true pupils of the sun and moon looked at the singularity again. He could already see some of the secrets of the singularity structure. The infinitely powerful power was connected, compressed, condensed, transformed, and circulated through an extremely natural and mysterious method that seemed to be displaying the supreme Great Tao naked. In the end, it formed an extremely mysterious and indescribable whole. Every bit of energy flow and every bit of energy distribution in this body contains some kind of law of heaven and earth compressed within it, reflecting the supreme Great Tao in the dark. Luo Fan's eyes shone on the singularity, and countless mysterious runes flashed in his eyes. With the true pupils of the sun and moon, the difficulty of comprehending the Tao for Luo Fan was many times lower than before. Even so, the structure of the singularity was extremely complicated. Even he could not completely understand the mysteries of the singularity structure in a short period of time. To Luo Fan, after coming to the primordial world, the most important thing was to improve his cultivation realm. Other than that, everything else was secondary. At that moment, when he encountered a mystery that he could not easily understand, Luo Fan did not care about anything else. He stopped there, sat cross-legged, and carefully comprehended it. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. On this day, Luo Fan's eyes turned slightly. The runes that had been flashing in his eyes in a disorderly manner suddenly shook. They quickly entangled, condensed, and turned into an extremely awkward scripture. After the scripture was formed, Luo Fan's body trembled slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. There's actually such an unexpected surprise. It seems that there is indeed a great opportunity for me here. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. He raised his hand and wiped it gently. The extremely awkward scripture appeared out of nowhere in the void. As the scripture appeared, the surrounding space-time that was affected by the singularity fluctuated slightly, producing an extremely subtle and almost undetectable change. This change was extremely mysterious. It could not be described with words, nor could it be clearly described. Even Luo Fan could only feel that there was a change. It's a pity that it's not complete. Luo Fan sighed and raised his hand to disperse the extremely awkward scripture. Although staying here for a year was not considered a long time for Luo Fan, it was rather precious when he was about to welcome the arrival of the great tribulation of the primordial world. Since he had already comprehended this hard-to-pronounce scripture, Luo Fan did not want to waste any more time here. With a thought, he dashed forward without hesitation. In an instant, he rushed into the singularity. As soon as he entered the singularity, Luo Fan sensed a feeling as if he had entered steel. From the outside, although the singularity did not emit light, it was not considered dark either. It was similar to its surroundings and could also reflect light. One could also see its form and body. However, as soon as he entered the singularity, Luo Fan felt that his solar moon true eyes seemed to have completely lost their effect. He was surrounded by boundless, indescribable darkness. There was not a single trace of light. He could not even emit light if he wanted to. The surrounding time and space seemed to have completely frozen. Even his primordial unity Tao fruit seemed to have completely lost its vitality. Even the techniques in his body, the world in his sea of consciousness, and even his spirit had completely stopped moving. It was as if he had been trapped for a moment and could not break through no matter what he did. After all, Luo Fan had already attained the primordial unity Tao fruit. Although the singularity was extremely mysterious, and even time had stopped, he could still think a little. After comprehending the extremely awkward scripture, Luo Fan did not expect to enter the singularity in such a state. However, he knew that the scripture would definitely be useful after he entered the singularity. At that moment, with a flash of inspiration, he knew that the scripture would be useful here. With a thought, the awkward-sounding scripture emerged out of thin air, slowly spread, and gradually filled his spirit. As the scripture was formed and spread, Luo Fan felt that his mind, which he could think, had been growing stronger and clearer. At the same time, billions of beams of light emerged from the inner world of his spirit, gradually filling the inner world, then going beyond the inner world and spreading to the entire spirit. As the billions of beams of light emerged, the towering Pangu bone in Luo Fan's sea of consciousness slowly grew brighter. Gradually, the stagnant time was broken. A long while later, when the awkward-sounding scripture was completely formed, the eyes of the Pangu bone shone slightly. The eyes of the Pangu bone sparkled slightly. Within the golden and silver light, that awkward-sounding scripture emerged. Billions of beams of light pierced out of the Pangu bone and filled up Jihao's entire spiritual space. That awkward-sounding scripture dazzled out of the eye sockets of the Pangu bone, enveloped the entire spiritual world, and filled the entire spiritual world with this scripture. The change quickly expanded, and within a blink of an eye, it had already filled up his entire body. As his entire body was wrapped up by the broken scripture, Luo Fan instantly felt that the stagnant time was gone. Inside his body, the Tai fruits of Tao became nimble again, and his powers were lively and nimble. All his body features had been restored to normal. Luo Fan's eyes sparkled. As the golden and silver light flashed, the surrounding scenes were reflected in his eyes. So this is it. As he saw the surroundings clearly, an uncontrollable emotion flashed across his mind. At this moment, the inside of the singularity was no longer dark. Instead, it was an incomparably beautiful scene. This was a magical place. The space seemed to be infinitely vast, yet infinitely small. It seemed that he couldn't walk out of this space, even if he walked for hundreds of millions of years. But it also seemed that he only needed one step to step out of this space and leave this singularity. The surroundings were filled with billions of different colors. Almost any color that Luo Fan could think of could be found in this place. These countless colors interweave together in a very mysterious way, constantly changing, constantly twisting, and constantly appearing and disappearing. While appearing bizarre and dazzling, it did not make people feel any annoyance, nor did it seem messy. Instead, it revealed some kind of fascinating mystery. Even Luo Fan could not help but be shocked when he saw this scene. His divine soul, which had not lost its composure for an unknown amount of time, also changed. As expected of the space-time tunnel, time, space, matter, and energy have all lost their normal state. If it weren't for that scripture, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even be able to maintain myself. I could only follow the operation of the internal mechanism of the space-time tunnel, and eventually leave from the other exit of the tunnel after an unknown amount of time. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. After that, his mind, will, divine soul, body, magic power, and primordial unity Tao fruit all return to their normal state.